You know that feeling. It is a Tuesday afternoon, your inbox is overflowing, and you have just received an email that completely derails a project you have been working on for weeks. Or maybe you are stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting, and the frustration starts to simmer, threatening to ruin your entire day. In these moments, adversity feels like a wall, a solid, immovable barrier standing between you and your peace of mind. We have all been there, feeling the weight of these challenges, big and small, as if they are forces working against us. But what if that feeling, that entire perspective, is a mistake? What if we have been looking at adversity all wrong? The ancient Stoics, philosophers who mastered the art of living well, proposed a radical shift in perception. They did not see adversity as a barrier. They saw it as the most precise tool we possess. Imagine that for a moment. The very thing that feels like it is breaking you down could be the instrument that builds you up stronger and more resilient than before. This is not about naive optimism or simply thinking positive. This is about a profound philosophical principle, one that Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who faced unimaginable pressures, wrote about in his private journal, Meditations. He penned a line that cuts to the heart of this idea. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Let that sink in. The obstacle itself is not just something to be overcome. It is the very path forward. The traffic jam becomes your training ground for patience. The critical email becomes your opportunity to practice grace under pressure. The project failure becomes the raw material for building wisdom. This Stoic perspective transforms adversity from a problem to be solved into a practice to be embraced. It is the ultimate reframe, turning life's inevitable difficulties into the whetstone on which we sharpen our character. In this video, we are going to explore exactly how to make this shift. We will dive into specific practical Stoic principles that act as a guide for this transformation. This is not a history lesson, it is a practical workshop for your life. We will unpack how to change what the word adversity even means to you, how to see challenges with clear, objective eyes, and how to build an inner fortress of character that no external circumstance can breach. We will look at powerful mental exercises used for thousands of years to prepare for hardship and learn how to find gratitude and purpose even in the midst of difficulty. Think of this as your guide to using adversity, not as something that happens to you, but as something that happens for you, a precision tool for sculpting the person you are meant to become. If you have ever felt knocked down by life and wanted a way to not just get back up, but to rise stronger, then you are in the right place. This is about reclaiming your power, one challenge at a time. The first step in using adversity is to change what the word itself means to you. Right now, you likely see a traffic jam, a critical comment, or a missed deadline as a negative event, a problem. The Stoic shift begins with understanding that the event itself is neutral. It is simply a thing that happened. The label of bad or difficult is not inherent in the event. It is a judgment that we attach to it. This is the foundational principle of Stoic philosophy, and it is the key that unlocks adversity's potential as a tool. This idea rests on what is known as the Dichotomy of Control, a concept perfectly articulated by the philosopher Epictetus, who began his famous Enchiridion with this life-changing distinction. He wrote that some things are up to us and some things are not. Our opinions, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions are up to us. What is not up to us includes our body, our property, our reputation, and our public office. In short, everything that is not our own doing. Adversity, in its raw form, almost always falls into that second category. You cannot control the reckless driver, the market crash, or the unexpected illness. But your response, your opinion of the event, your impulse to react, your decision on what to do next, that 100% belongs to you. This is where your power lies, not in trying to command the uncontrollable world, but in mastering your internal world. Let's make this concrete with an example everyone can relate to: being stuck in traffic. The typical reaction is a cascade of frustration. You grip the steering wheel, curse the delay, and feel your blood pressure rise. You might even start mentally writing the angry email you will send explaining why you are late. In this scenario, the adversity, the traffic, has not just caused a delay, it has taken over your entire emotional state. You have handed the reins of your well-being over to a line of cars. Now, let's apply the Stoic shift. The traffic is not up to you, it is an external event. Your judgment of it as a catastrophe or a personal injustice, however, is entirely within your control. So you pause, you recognize the dichotomy. You cannot make the cars move, but you can choose what to do with this moment. Instead of frustration, you see an opportunity. This is now a forced pause in your day, a chance to practice the virtue of patience. You can choose to listen to a podcast you enjoy, to sit in silence and gather your thoughts, or simply to observe the world outside your window without judgment. The situation has not changed, but your relationship to it has been completely transformed. The adversity has become the training ground. This is the precision tool in action. By shifting your focus from the uncontrollable event to your controllable response, you are actively sculpting your character. Every time you choose patience over anger in a moment of frustration, you are strengthening that neural pathway, building a more resilient version of yourself. The Stoics were not suggesting we become emotionless robots. They were teaching us to become architects of our inner world, to build a foundation so solid that external storms cannot shake it. The goal is to reach a point where adversity does not trigger a chaotic emotional reaction, but instead prompts a deliberate, virtuous choice. This is how you turn lead into gold, how you take the raw, difficult material of life and use it to build a life of character and purpose. So let's bring this home. Think about one minor irritation you experienced recently. Maybe it was a long line at the coffee shop, a software glitch, or a forgetful family member. In that moment, what was your automatic judgment? Did you immediately label it as an annoyance, a setback? Now, replay the scene with this new lens. Separate the raw event, the slow-moving line, from the story you told yourself about it. What if you had seen it not as a thief of your time, but as a 60-second invitation to practice calmness? How would that simple shift have changed your experience? This is the practice. It starts small with the daily annoyances, so that when the larger challenges inevitably arrive, this way of seeing the world has become your default. You have already done the reps. What if you could look at a problem and see only the facts, not the fear? This is the next level of precision in our Stoic toolkit, moving beyond simply recognizing what we can and cannot control, to mastering how we perceive the events themselves. Our minds are incredible meaning-making machines, but they often work against us by adding layers of interpretation, judgment, and emotional color to a situation before we even have a chance to see it clearly. A setback is not just a setback, it is a catastrophe. A critical comment is not just words, it is a personal attack. This automatic process is what the Stoics sought to interrupt through a powerful practice that we might call objective perception, or seeing things as they truly are, stripped bare of the stories we tell about them. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this discipline in his meditations, advising himself to strip away the added opinion to see the thing in its pure, simple form. He knew that it is not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them. The goal here is to become a forensic observer of your own life, to learn to separate the raw data of an event from the often frightening and overwhelming narrative that your mind instantly constructs around it. Think of it like this: when you look at a tree, you see a tree. You do not immediately see a beautiful tree or an ugly tree or a tree that is blocking your view. You just see a tree. That is the objective reality. The adjectives, the value judgments come after. Now, apply that same clear-eyed gaze to a challenging life event. The practice is to consciously strip away the adjectives and see only the noun. This is incredibly difficult because our emotional brains are wired for speed, not for accuracy. They jump to conclusions to protect us, but those conclusions are often flawed and always inflammatory. For instance, consider a professional setback, like a proposal you worked on for months being rejected. The immediate, automatic perception is often a judgment-laden story. I am a failure. My work is not good enough. They do not respect me. This ruins everything. Notice how that story is packed with global, permanent, and personal conclusions. It is a narrative of defeat. Now, let's apply the Stoic practice of objective perception. We take that same event and we break it down to its bare, observable facts. We write it down as if we were a neutral journalist reporting the news. The objective facts might read, "On Tuesday, the committee reviewed my proposal. A majority voted against its approval. The project will not move forward as planned." That is it. That is the event in its pure form. Compare that cold, simple statement to the fiery, self-incriminating story of "I am a failure." The objective version is manageable. It is a single event in time, not a verdict on your entire worth. It contains data you can work with: a committee, a vote, a specific outcome. The emotional narrative, on the other hand, is a trap that leads to rumination, despair, and inaction. By practicing this separation, you reclaim the power to choose your response based on reality, not based on a fear-based story. You can now ask productive questions. What was the feedback? What can I learn from this? What is the next logical step? The adversity has been transformed from a monster in the shadows into a clearly defined set of circumstances that you can address. This skill is like a superpower in a world that constantly tries to hijack our perceptions. It is the difference between seeing a dark shape in the corner of your room and panicking versus turning on the light and seeing it is just a pile of clothes. The Stoic practice of objective perception is that act of turning on the light. It does not make the pile of clothes disappear, but it completely removes the terror, allowing you to deal with the actual situation calmly. Marcus Aurelius would practice this by describing things in their most basic physical terms. A piece of luxury food is a dead fish. A purple robe is sheep's wool dyed with the blood of a shellfish. By seeing the mundane reality behind the glamour, he freed himself from being controlled by desire or aversion. In the same way, seeing a rejection as a simple no vote rather than a profound personal condemnation frees you to respond with wisdom rather than react with pain. So let's put this into practice right now. Bring to mind a current worry, a situation that is causing you anxiety or frustration. It could be a conflict with a colleague, a financial concern, a health issue. Now take a moment to do this mentally, or better yet, grab a piece of paper and write it down. First, write down the story, the full emotional narrative as you have been telling it to yourself. Then, on a new line, write down only the objective facts. Strip away every judgment, every prediction of doom, every assumption about what other people are thinking. What actually happened? What was actually said? What are the measurable, observable realities? You will likely find a startling difference between the two. The story feels heavy and overwhelming. The facts, while perhaps disappointing, feel clear and contained. This space between the fact and the story is where your freedom lies. It is the workshop where you can begin to sculpt a response grounded in reality, not in fear. This is how you start to use perception itself as a precision tool, cutting away the unnecessary drama to reveal the solid core of a situation that you can actually work with. Imagine your character as a fortress. Adversity is the weather outside. It cannot breach the walls unless you open the gates. This powerful metaphor gets to the very heart of the Stoic understanding of the self. We have been exploring how to change our perception of external events, but this next principle takes us inward to the very core of our being. The Stoics believed that our true self, what they called our proherses, or our faculty of moral choice, is like an inner citadel. It is a space of ultimate sovereignty. While external circumstances can undoubtedly cause us physical pain, financial loss, or social discomfort, they are powerless to touch our virtue, our integrity, or our will unless we willingly grant them entry. This is a radical and empowering idea. It means that no matter what happens in the world outside, the command center of your character remains secure. The storms may rage, but the fortress stands. Marcus Aurelius frequently meditated on this concept of an inner citadel, a refuge that he could retreat to at any moment. He wrote that the soul is a sphere in perfect equilibrium, impossible to disrupt from the outside. Similarly, Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, taught that our will is inviolable. He said, "I must die, but must I die groaning? I must be imprisoned, but must I whine as well? I must suffer exile. Can anyone then hinder me from going with a smile and a good courage and at peace?" His point was devastatingly clear. His captors could chain his body, but they had no access to his mind. They could force him into exile, but they could not force him into despair. The final authority over his judgments, his attitudes, and his responses remained entirely his own. This is the ultimate source of human freedom, and it is located not in our circumstances, but in our volition, our capacity to choose. Let's bring this down to a scenario we can all relate to: facing public criticism. Perhaps you have posted an idea online, delivered a presentation at work, or even just expressed an opinion to a group of friends, and you are met with a wave of negative feedback. The adversity is real, the criticism stings. The automatic, gates-wide, dopamine reaction is to feel personally wounded. You might become defensive, lash out in anger, or retreat into shame. In this reactive state, you have essentially opened the gates of your fortress and invited the adversity right in. You have allowed the external event, the critical words, to dictate your internal state. But the Stoic, the person who has fortified their inner citadel, recognizes a crucial distinction. The criticism is an external event, like the rain falling on the fortress walls. It is happening, but your assessment of that criticism and your chosen response is an internal matter guarded safely within. So, instead of reacting, you pause. You retreat for a moment into that inner space of calm judgment. You ask yourself Stoic questions. Is there any truth in this criticism that I can learn from? Is the person speaking from ignorance or malice? And if so, does their opinion truly hold weight? Most importantly, what would a virtuous response look like? It might be to acknowledge a valid point with grace. It might be to calmly correct a misunderstanding. Or it might be to simply remain silent, recognizing that no response is necessary. The key is that the response is chosen, not triggered. It comes from a place of strength and principle, not from a place of wounded ego. By doing this, you are not pretending the criticism doesn't exist. You are simply refusing to let it control you. You are demonstrating that your self-worth is not determined by the approval or disapproval of others. It is anchored securely within your own character. Take a moment now to think back to a time when you felt attacked or unfairly judged. It could be a recent memory or one from long ago. Recall the heat of the moment, the flush of emotion. Now look past that initial reaction. What part of you remained untouched? Was there a small, quiet voice that knew your own worth, that understood the situation with more clarity than your panicked emotions did? That voice, that calm center of awareness, is your inner citadel. It is the part of you that can observe the storm without becoming the storm. The goal of Stoic practice is to strengthen that citadel until it becomes your default residence, the place from which you engage with the world. Every time you choose a reasoned response over a reactive one, you are adding another stone to the wall, making it that much harder for external adversity to shake your foundation. Now we move from building our inner fortress to a concept that might seem counterintuitive at first, but is perhaps the most powerful tool in our Stoic workshop. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by Stoic thought, gave it a name that captures its essence perfectly. He said, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." Amor Fati, it is a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This is not about gritting your teeth and merely enduring the bad things that happen to you. That is resignation. Amor Fati is something far more active and profound. It is the proactive, heartfelt embrace of everything life throws at you, the good, the bad, and the utterly bewildering, not as random misfortunes, but as necessary ingredients for your unique development. It is the decision to see every single event, especially the painful ones, as an indispensable part of the story that is your life, a story you would not change even if you could. This idea is deeply Stoic. Marcus Aurelius constantly meditated on this theme of acceptance, urging himself to welcome whatever nature brought his way. He wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Think about that image. The fire does not complain about the quality of the wood. It uses whatever fuel it is given to burn brighter. This is the spirit of Amor Fati. It is the recognition that life's difficulties are not mistakes in the script, they are the script. They are the very challenges that force us to develop courage, resilience, and wisdom. A life without any adversity would be like a muscle never being tested. It would remain weak and undeveloped. The Stoic loves their fate because they understand that it is through friction that we are polished, through resistance that we find our strength. Let's make this practical. Consider a personal setback that felt devastating at the time, like the end of a significant relationship or an unexpected job loss. In the moment, it is natural to see it as a pure loss, a failure, a door slamming shut. We rail against it, asking, "Why me?" and wishing things had turned out differently. But what if you applied the lens of Amor Fati? What if, instead of fighting the reality, you chose to love it? This does not mean you enjoyed the pain. It means you accept that this event was a necessary turning point. That failed relationship, as painful as it was, might have freed you to meet a partner who was a much better match, or it might have taught you crucial lessons about your own needs and boundaries. That job loss, while terrifying, might have pushed you to start your own business, retrain for a more fulfilling career, or simply reassess what truly matters to you. By looking back, you can often see the hidden redirection, the path that opened only because the familiar one closed. Amor Fati is about having the faith to believe that this redirection exists even when you are in the midst of the pain, to trust that the universe is not punishing you but sculpting you. This is where the precision of the tool becomes apparent. When you practice Amor Fati, you are not just passively accepting a situation, you are actively mining it for its value. You are asking, what is this teaching me? How is this making me stronger? What door is this closing so that a better one can open? This shift in questioning transforms your entire experience of adversity. It stops being something you suffer through and starts being something you engage with. It becomes fodder for growth, the raw material for building a more interesting, complex, and capable character. The goal is to reach a point where you can look back on your life with all its twists and turns, its highs and its profound lows, and feel a sense of gratitude for the entire messy, beautiful journey. You would not edit out the difficult chapters because you understand they are essential to the narrative. So, I want you to try this now. Cast your mind back to a past difficulty, something you have perhaps even complained about for years. It could be a childhood challenge, a financial struggle, a period of illness, or a professional rejection. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, see if you can identify how that event was essential to who you are today. Did it build a depth of empathy you would not otherwise have? Did it force you to develop a skill you now rely on? Did it steer you away from a path that would have been wrong for you? Find the thread that connects that adversity to a strength or an insight you now possess. This is not about pretending it was easy. It is about recognizing its necessary role in your development. By doing this, you are not just remembering the past, you are training your mind to approach current and future challenges with this same transformative love. You are learning to welcome the sculptor's chisel, knowing that each strike, however sharp, is shaping a masterpiece. What if you could take the sting out of misfortune before it even happens? This is not a wish for pessimism, but the essence of a powerful and often misunderstood Stoic technique known as Premeditatio Malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. Far from being a depressing exercise in dwelling on the worst, it is a strategic form of mental inoculation. The goal is to voluntarily and calmly expose your mind to potential difficulties, so that if and when they arrive in reality, they are not shocking strangers but familiar guests you have already learned how to host. It is like a fire drill for the soul. By rehearsing the scenario in the safety of your own mind, you reduce the power of fear and panic, and you prepare a blueprint for a reasoned, virtuous response. The Stoic philosopher Seneca was a strong advocate of this practice. He wrote in his letters, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." He advised us to remind ourselves that we are mortal, that our possessions are temporary, and that fortune is fickle. He was not trying to make people sad, he was trying to make them free. By accepting the possibility of loss, we loosen its grip on our happiness, which then becomes rooted in something far more stable, our own character. This practice works on two profound levels. First, it serves as a powerful antidote to taking the good things in our lives for granted. By regularly contemplating the loss of our health, our loved ones, or our comfortable circumstances, we are jolted into a deep and immediate appreciation for them in the present moment. It is a paradoxical truth that by thinking about what it would be like to lose something, we actually enjoy and value it more fully while we have it. The second and perhaps more crucial function is resilience training. When adversity strikes without warning, it often triggers a fight or flight response that clouds our judgment. But if you have already walked through that scenario in your mind, it loses its element of surprise. The initial shock is diminished, and you create a mental space where your trained, rational response can take over, rather than being overrun by raw emotion. You have already faced the dragon in your imagination, so when you meet it in reality, you are not frozen in fear but prepared for battle. Let's bring this ancient practice into a modern context. Imagine you have a crucial presentation at work, one that could lead to a major promotion. The typical approach might be to visualize success, to picture everything going perfectly. While positive thinking has its place, the Stoic would add a crucial, grounding step. Shortly before the presentation, you would take just a minute to conduct a premeditatio. You would calmly visualize things going wrong. What if the projector fails? What if your mind goes blank during the most important slide? What if a key stakeholder challenges your data aggressively? Instead of letting these thoughts induce anxiety, you treat them as practical problems to be solved. You mentally rehearse your response. If the projector fails, you have a printed copy to distribute. If your mind goes blank, you have practiced taking a slow sip of water, a deep breath, and referring to your notes. If you face an aggressive challenge, you have prepared to respond with calm respect, focusing on the data rather than the tone. By doing this, you are not inviting failure, you are disarming it. You are ensuring that no single setback can derail your composure because you have a plan for it. This is how you transform anxiety into preparedness. The fear of the unknown is one of the most potent fears we experience. Premeditatio Malorum shines a light into those dark corners, revealing that the monsters we fear are often manageable challenges in disguise. It is the ultimate exercise in focusing on what you can control, your preparation and your response, while making peace with the unpredictability of outcomes. The Stoics were realists. They understood that life involves loss, criticism, and failure. To pretend otherwise is to live in a fragile bubble, but to consciously and courageously contemplate these possibilities is to build a life of robust resilience. It is to say to fortune, I know your nature, I am prepared for your twists and turns, my peace does not depend on your favor. So, let's try a small exercise together right now. Bring to mind a specific fear or anxiety you are carrying. It might be a concern about your health, a financial worry, or a difficult conversation you need to have. Do not push it away. Instead, invite it forward for a moment. Now, gently walk through the scenario in your mind. What is the worst-case outcome you fear? See it clearly, but see yourself within it, responding not with panic, but with stoic virtue. What would courage look like in that situation? What would wisdom dictate? How could you act with integrity even then? By mentally rehearsing this virtuous response, you are not cursing yourself with bad luck. You are building a neural pathway of strength. You are carving a groove of resilience so that if life ever takes you down that road, your character will know the way. Pause. That space between an event and your reaction is where your character is sculpted. We have been exploring how to reframe our perception of adversity and build an inner fortress, but this next discipline is the very mechanism that makes it all possible. It is the moment-to-moment practice that turns Stoic theory into lived reality. The Stoics called this the Discipline of Assent, and it is perhaps the most practical skill you can develop for navigating life's challenges. The concept is deceptively simple, yet profoundly life-changing. Our minds are constantly bombarded with impressions, initial interpretations of the events happening around us. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and the immediate impression is that jerk. Your boss sends a terse email, and the impression is, I'm in trouble. These impressions are automatic, lightning fast, and often heavily skewed toward the negative. They are the raw data that your brain, evolved for survival, serves up in an instant. The critical Stoic insight, championed by Epictetus, is that this first impression is not the problem. The problem is what happens next. The problem is our automatic assent, our immediate, unquestioning agreement that this initial interpretation is not only true, but is the complete and final truth of the situation. We jump from impression to reaction without a single moment of conscious choice. The discipline of assent is about inserting a deliberate pause right there, in that crucial gap. It is about learning to withhold your automatic agreement, to question the initial story your mind is telling you, and to create the space needed for a reasoned, virtuous choice to emerge. Epictetus laid this out with remarkable clarity. He taught that impressions come to us constantly, but it is our act of assent that gives them power. He said, "It is not events that disturb people, but their judgments concerning them, and our judgment is formed the moment we assent to an impression." He used a beautiful analogy, suggesting that we should treat a troubling impression like a suspicious stranger at our front door. You do not immediately throw the door open wide and invite them in to ransack your house. Instead, you pause, you check through the peephole, you ask, "Who are you? Are you what you appear to be?" This is the work of the discipline of assent. You are the gatekeeper of your own mind, and your job is to carefully vet every impression before granting it entry and allowing it to influence your emotions and actions. This is not about suppressing emotions. It is about intervening before the emotion is fully formed by an unquestioned judgment. By withholding immediate assent, you reclaim your sovereignty. You move from being a puppet jerked around by external events to being the puppeteer, consciously guiding your own responses. Let's make this intensely practical with a scenario almost everyone has faced: receiving an angry email. You see the subject line, your name in bold, and your heart rate quickens. You open it and read a message that feels like an attack, critical, accusatory, perhaps unfairly so. The initial impression floods your system. I am under attack. This person is trying to humiliate me. This is unfair. This impression carries with it a powerful emotional charge: anger, defensiveness, hurt. The automatic, assent-giving reaction is to fire back a reply. Your fingers fly across the keyboard, crafting a defensive, equally sharp rebuttal. You hit send with a surge of self-righteous satisfaction. But 10 minutes later, or perhaps the next day, you often regret it. The email chain escalates, relationships are damaged, and the original problem remains unsolved. Now let's replay that scenario with the discipline of assent applied. The event is the same, the email arrives, the initial impression is the same: attack. But here is where you insert the pause. You take a deep breath. You physically step away from the keyboard. You remember Epictetus's teaching. You question the impression. You become the gatekeeper. Is this email truly a personal attack? Could the sender be stressed, poorly communicating, or operating with incomplete information? Is my initial interpretation the only possible one? By asking these questions, you are withholding your assent. You are refusing to blindly accept the first, most alarming story. In that space, a new possibility emerges. Perhaps a virtuous response is not a defensive counterattack, but a request for clarification. Maybe a simple, "Thank you for your feedback. I can see you're upset. Can we schedule a brief call to discuss this so I can fully understand your concerns?" This response, born from a moment of pause, de-escalates the situation, demonstrates professionalism, and keeps the focus on solving the problem rather than winning a fight. The adversity of the angry email has been transformed into an opportunity to practice grace under pressure. This tiny pause is the sculptor's most delicate tool. It is the moment you choose not to be carved by the chisel of external events, but to guide the chisel yourself. The more you practice this, the wider that space between impulse and action becomes. It starts to feel less like a frantic pause and more like a spacious arena where you have the freedom to choose your response. This is not about becoming slow or indecisive. It is about becoming intentional. The goal is to build a mental reflex that, when triggered by a strong negative impression, automatically creates a buffer zone for conscious choice. So, the next time you feel that familiar surge of anger or anxiety or embarrassment, see it as a signal. That emotion is the symptom of an impression to which you are about to give assent. Let that feeling be your cue to press the mental pause button. Just for a few seconds, resist the urge to react. Breathe, question the story, ask yourself, is this impression entirely accurate? What would a wiser, more virtuous version of me do in this situation? In that quiet space, you will find the freedom to sculpt a response you can be proud of, a response that builds your character rather than one that diminishes it. Marcus Aurelius offers us a directive that is as challenging as it is profound. He writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Let's sit with that for a moment. This is not a passive observation. It is an active command for how to engage with the world. An obstacle is not a detour on the path. It is the very path itself. This is the core of the Stoic Reframe, the mental alchemy that allows us to transform leaden setbacks into golden opportunities for growth. It moves beyond simply accepting what happens to actively leveraging what happens for our benefit. Every single obstacle, from a minor inconvenience to a life-altering challenge, presents a specific, targeted opportunity to exercise a particular virtue. The adversity itself becomes the raw material, the gymnasium, the classroom for building the character we wish to possess. Patience is just a nice idea until you are stuck in a seemingly endless line. Courage is an abstract concept until you are faced with a fear that makes your heart pound. Creativity is dormant until a problem demands an innovative solution. Perseverance is untested until you feel the urge to quit. The obstacle does not block the practice of virtue, it invites it. It is the precise tool that forces that virtue to manifest in the real world. This philosophy is woven throughout Stoic thought. It is the recognition that a smooth, easy life does not build strength or depth. A sculptor cannot create a masterpiece without resistant material to carve. In the same way, our character remains soft and undefined without the friction of difficulty. The Stoics believed that nature, or the logos of the universe, is inherently rational. From this perspective, the challenges we encounter are not random punishments or meaningless suffering. They are custom-fitted lessons designed to develop the specific virtues we need to live a good and flourishing life. When we complain about an obstacle from a Stoic viewpoint, it is as if we are complaining about the weight in the gym, failing to see that it is the very thing building our muscle. The reframe is this: instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we learn to ask, "What virtue is this situation offering me the chance to practice?" This shift in questioning changes everything. It turns us from victims of circumstance into active students of life. Consider a very common and deeply stressful form of adversity: financial difficulty. Perhaps an unexpected expense arises or income becomes unstable. The immediate, natural reaction is often panic, anxiety, and a feeling of being trapped. We might frantically scroll through our accounts, our minds racing with catastrophic scenarios. This is the unchallenged impression, but let's apply the Stoic reframe. This financial pressure, while undoubtedly uncomfortable, is a powerful opportunity to practice several key virtues. First, it invites the practice of frugality. Suddenly, every purchase becomes a conscious choice. You are forced to distinguish with crystal clarity between what you truly need and what you merely want. This is not deprivation. It is a masterclass in discernment and minimalism, stripping away the non-essential to reveal what actually holds value. Second, it demands resourcefulness. When the easy path of spending freely is blocked, you are compelled to find new paths. Can you repair something instead of replacing it? Can you discover a free or low-cost alternative for entertainment? Can you use your skills in a new way to generate income? Financial constraint can become a powerful engine for creativity and innovation. Finally, it tests your courage and perseverance. It takes courage to face financial reality without flinching, and perseverance to keep making wise choices day after day, even when it is difficult. The financial problem has not disappeared, but it has been completely reframed. It is no longer just a threat, it is a training ground for building a more resilient, resourceful, and virtuous self. So, let's bring this directly into your life right now. I want you to bring to mind a current obstacle. It does not have to be a monumental one. It could be a persistent disagreement with a family member, a demanding project at work that feels overwhelming, a health issue that requires daily management, or even a goal that feels out of reach. Now apply the Stoic Reframe. Look directly at this obstacle and ask yourself this precise question: what specific virtue does this challenge allow me to practice? If it is the difficult person, is it an opportunity to practice patience, or perhaps the virtue of justice, by striving to understand their perspective fairly? If it is the overwhelming project, is it a call to practice perseverance, breaking it down into manageable steps? If it is the health issue, does it offer a chance to practice courage each day, or temperance in following a prescribed regimen? Name the virtue, speak it aloud or write it down. By giving it a name, you transform the obstacle from a problem to be solved into a practice to be undertaken. You are no longer just dealing with a difficulty, you are actively sculpting your character, using the resistance of the moment to carve out a more virtuous version of yourself. This is how the way forward is revealed, not by removing the obstacle, but by walking directly through it. Imagine rising high above the earth, watching the planet shrink beneath you until it is just a pale blue dot in the vast blackness of space. From this incredible vantage point, the borders of nations vanish. The sprawling cities become tiny patterns of light. The mountains and oceans are mere textures on a small sphere. Now try to locate your own life within this immense panorama. Your home, your workplace, the streets you walk every day, they are invisible from here. And the problem that felt so overwhelming just moments ago, the conflict that consumed your thoughts, now seems to belong to a different reality altogether. This act of mental travel is not science fiction. It is a powerful Stoic exercise known as the view from above, and it is one of the most effective tools for gaining instant perspective on our troubles. The goal is to consciously zoom out from the narrow, close-up frame of our immediate concerns and see our lives within the grand, sweeping context of the cosmos and the flow of time. This practice does not make our problems disappear, but it does something far more valuable. It reveals their true scale. It reminds us that our struggles, however intense, are a tiny part of a vast, unfolding whole, and this realization can drain our anxieties of their overwhelming power, replacing panic with a profound and calming sense of humility. Marcus Aurelius was a master of this technique. As the Emperor of Rome, he bore the weight of immense responsibilities, from managing military campaigns to navigating complex political intrigues. In the pages of his private journal, Meditations, we see him repeatedly using this cosmic perspective to steady his mind and maintain his equanimity. He would remind himself to look at the past, the great upheavals of empires, and you can foresee the future too. It will be the same, for it is not possible to deviate from the rhythm of the present. He would contemplate the countless generations that have come and gone before him, all the people who have loved, strived, suffered, and died. He would reflect on the sheer size of the universe, acknowledging that the earth is a mere point in space, and his own life within it even smaller. He was not engaging in escapism, he was engaging in realism. By confronting the true, cosmic scale of his existence, he was able to see his daily adversities for what they were: temporary, small in the grand scheme, and part of a natural order that is far greater than any single individual. This perspective fostered a deep humility, a recognition that he was a small but purposeful part of a magnificent whole, and this humility was the source of his incredible calm under pressure. Let's bring this down from the cosmos to a situation we all know too well, a social conflict. Perhaps you had a heated argument with a colleague, or a friend said something that felt like a deep betrayal. In the hours and days that follow, the incident can loop in your mind, growing larger and more significant with each repetition. You replay the words, you imagine different outcomes, and the emotional charge can feel all-consuming. It feels like the most important thing in the world right now. This is when you can deploy the view from above. First, zoom out in space. Imagine yourself floating up, seeing the building where the argument happened, then the city, then the country, then the continent, until the entire world is a marble. From there, the specific room and the harsh words spoken within it are lost to sight. Then, zoom out in time. Fast forward 1 year from now. Will this argument still feel as raw and significant? Will you even remember the specific phrasing that stung so much? Now, fast forward 10 years. The details will likely be a blur. Fast forward a century, and everyone involved in that moment will have passed away, their lives and their disagreements absorbed into history. This is not meant to be morbid, it is meant to be liberating. By seeing the event in its true context, you are not dismissing your feelings. You are simply putting them in a much larger frame, which naturally reduces their intensity. The conflict transforms from a world-shattering event into a single, passing moment in the long arc of your life. This practice is a direct antidote to what we might call ego inflation, where our personal dramas swell to fill our entire field of vision. The view from above is the pin that pops that bubble, allowing us to breathe again. It does not tell us that our problems are meaningless. It tells us that our capacity to handle them is far greater than we think when we are stuck in the narrow view. It reconnects us with a sense of awe and wonder at the universe itself, shifting our focus from a personal problem to our participation in a mysterious and beautiful cosmos. This shift is incredibly therapeutic. The anxiety that comes from a social slight or a professional setback is often rooted in a perceived threat to our ego, our status, our self-image. But from a cosmic perspective, the ego is almost comically small. What remains is our essential humanity, our ability to choose virtue, to connect with others, and to appreciate the brief, precious moment of consciousness we have been given. The adversity becomes less about me and my wounded pride, and more about a universal human experience of navigating challenges. So I invite you to try this exercise right now with a current worry. Close your eyes for a moment if you can. Bring that concern to the forefront of your mind. Feel its weight. Now begin to zoom out. Picture yourself floating upward, seeing your town or city from above, then your country, then the whole earth, a blue and white jewel hanging in the blackness of space. Look back at your life from there, then zoom out in time. Think about all the people who have lived on this planet, the billions of stories that have unfolded. Think about the vast stretch of history that has already passed and the future that is yet to come. Now place your current worry within that immense frame. How does its size change? Does it feel as absolute, as permanent, as it did a minute ago? This is not about minimizing your experience, but about maximizing your perspective. It is about remembering that you are part of something so much larger, and that this connection can be a profound source of strength and calm. The view from above is the ultimate tool for recalibration, ensuring that our reactions to life's challenges are proportionate to their true cosmic scale. Just as athletes train for a game, Stoics train for life by voluntarily embracing discomfort. This might sound counterintuitive in a world dedicated to maximizing comfort and convenience, but it is one of the most practical and empowering tools in the Stoic toolkit. The practice is not about punishing yourself or engaging in extreme asceticism for its own sake. It is a deliberate, strategic form of inoculation. By periodically and willingly stepping into minor, manageable hardships, you build a psychological and emotional immunity to the larger, involuntary hardships that life will inevitably throw your way. You are essentially proving to your deepest self that you can handle difficulty, that discomfort is not synonymous with danger, and that your well-being is not dependent on perfect external conditions. This practice systematically dismantles the fear of lack, the fear of being cold, hungry, poor, or uncomfortable, which is often a greater source of anxiety than the actual conditions themselves. When you know from direct experience that you can endure a cold shower, skip a meal, or walk in the rain, the potential for future discomfort loses its power to control your decisions or shatter your peace. The Roman philosopher Seneca was a strong advocate for this kind of training. Despite being one of the wealthiest men in Rome, he would periodically practice poverty. He would set aside a few days each month to live on the cheapest food, wear his simplest clothing, and sleep on a hard bed. He wrote about this practice, explaining that its purpose was twofold. First, it was a powerful exercise in gratitude. By temporarily experiencing a lack, he would return to his normal life with a renewed and vivid appreciation for the comforts he usually enjoyed. The simple pleasure of a soft bed or a good meal became magnified after a period of doing without. Second, and more importantly, it was a rehearsal for fate. He said, "We must become familiar with the scenario we fear so that when it happens, it does not find us unprepared and panicked." By voluntarily choosing discomfort, he was taking away fortune's power to surprise and terrify him. If he ever lost his wealth, it would not be a catastrophic, unknown horror. It would be a condition he had already navigated successfully, a path he had already walked. This is the ultimate goal, to move through life with the unshakable confidence that comes from knowing your own capacity for endurance. The beauty of this practice is that it can be integrated into modern life in small, safe, but meaningful ways. You do not need to sell all your possessions and sleep on the floor. The goal is to find tiny, daily opportunities to flex your resilience muscle. One of the most accessible examples is the cold shower. Instead of ending your shower with a comforting stream of hot water, try turning the dial to cold for the final 30 seconds. The initial shock is precisely the point. Your mind will scream in protest, listing all the reasons you should avoid it. But by choosing to stay, by breathing through the discomfort, you are sending a powerful message to yourself. I am in charge here. My will is stronger than my momentary aversion. Another simple practice is to choose walking or biking for a short errand you would normally drive. You are voluntarily embracing a minor inconvenience, a little more time, a little more physical effort, to prove that convenience is a preference, not a necessity. Even something as simple as fasting from one meal can be profound. Skip lunch one day and simply observe the sensations of hunger. You will discover that hunger is a wave that crests and subsides. It is not an emergency. You learn that you can function perfectly well and that your mind remains clear even when your stomach is empty. These small acts are like deposits in your resilience bank account, building up a savings of inner strength that you can draw upon when a real crisis hits. The real transformation happens not in the moment of discomfort itself, but in the shift in your identity that follows. Each time you successfully complete one of these voluntary challenges, you are subtly rewriting the story you tell about yourself. You are moving from "I am someone who needs everything to be easy" to "I am someone who can handle difficulty when it arises." This newfound self-trust is invaluable. It allows you to take calculated risks, to speak your mind in difficult situations, and to face unexpected setbacks with a calm demeanor because you have already tested your limits in a controlled environment. You have moved from fearing adversity to being familiar with it, and familiarity breeds competence, not contempt. This practice ensures that when life forces a cold shower upon you, in the form of a financial loss, a personal rejection, or a physical ailment, you do not freeze in panic. You have already built the neural pathways for resilience. You know how to breathe, how to focus, and how to endure. The involuntary hardship becomes just another, slightly longer cold shower, unpleasant, but well within your capacity to manage. So, the challenge for you this week is a simple one. Choose one small, voluntary discomfort to embrace. It does not have to be dramatic. Perhaps it is deciding to drink your coffee black instead of with sugar and cream, experiencing the pure, bitter taste without the masking sweetness. Maybe it is leaving your phone at home when you go for a walk, voluntarily embracing a temporary disconnect from the digital world. It could be taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or spending an evening without turning on the television. The specific act matters less than the conscious intention behind it. Before you begin, state your purpose clearly to yourself. I am doing this not to suffer, but to strengthen my mind. I am proving to myself that I am more resilient than my cravings for comfort. Pay close attention to the urge to quit, to take the easy way out. That is the moment where the real training occurs. And when you complete it, take a moment to acknowledge your strength. You have just used a minor discomfort as a precision tool, chiseling away a small piece of fear and adding a solid stone to the foundation of your character. Stoics believe that nothing happens to you, but everything happens for your development and the good of the whole. This is perhaps the most expansive and spiritually profound pillar of their philosophy, and it invites us to see our lives not as a series of random accidents, but as threads woven intentionally into a vast, beautiful, and rational cosmic tapestry. The Stoics called this cosmic order the logos. This was not a cold, mechanical set of physical laws as we might think of today, but a living, intelligent, and benevolent principle that permeates all of existence. It is the reason and the fire that animates the universe, the source of all natural laws, and the guiding force that orchestrates events for the ultimate benefit of the entire cosmos. From this perspective, the concept of providence or fate is not a terrifying, blind force that controls us against our will. Instead, it is the unfolding of a divine, rational plan. Every single event, from the falling of a leaf to the rise and fall of an empire, plays its necessary part, and this includes the adversities that land squarely in the middle of our own lives. They are not random punishments or meaningless suffering. They are, in fact, tailored lessons, custom-fitted challenges designed by the very nature of reality to develop the specific virtues we need to fulfill our role within the whole. Marcus Aurelius returns to this idea again and again in his meditations, using it as an anchor during times of immense pressure. He writes to himself, "Everything that happens, happens justly." You will see this if you observe carefully, and in another passage he offers this stunning reframe: "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." He is not advising passive surrender. He is calling for active, heartfelt cooperation with the cosmic current. He reminds himself to look for the hidden benefit, the necessary function that each event serves from the perspective of the universe, a perspective far wiser and more encompassing than his own limited personal view. He trusted that even the most painful events, when seen from this elevated vantage point, were fitting and harmonious. A forest fire, while destructive to individual trees, returns nutrients to the soil and allows for new growth. In the same way, a personal failure, while painful in the moment, can clear the ground for a new direction that is more authentically aligned with our true nature. The Stoic task is to develop the trust to see this larger pattern at work even when we are in the midst of the flames. Let's make this tangible with a deeply personal example: the loss of a job. In the immediate aftermath, it is natural and human to feel a cascade of negative emotions: shock, fear, anger, and a profound sense of rejection. The narrative we tell ourselves is often one of victimhood. This happened to me. The company was unfair. My livelihood has been ripped away. This frame of reference is understandable, but it is also disempowering. It places you at the mercy of external forces. Now, let's apply the Stoic lens of the logos. What if this event, as difficult as it is happening for you? What if it is not an ending, but a necessary redirection? Perhaps that job, while comfortable, was subtly misaligned with your deepest talents and values. It might have kept you in a safe but unfulfilling routine, preventing you from exploring a path where you could make a more meaningful contribution. The loss, then, becomes the universe's way of pushing you out of a nest that had become too small. It forces you to re-evaluate, to ask fundamental questions about what you truly want and what you have to offer. It creates the space and the motivation for you to seek work that is not just a paycheck, but a vocation, a calling that is in greater harmony with your essential nature and, by extension, the cosmic plan. The adversity is the catalyst for a more authentic life. This shift from victim to participant in a cosmic drama is incredibly empowering. It replaces the question, "Why is this happening to me?" with a far more productive question, "What is this preparing me for?" This does not mean you should not feel the pain of the loss. Stoicism is not about numbness. It is about moving through the pain with purpose, extracting its lesson like a miner extracts ore from rock. The rock itself is hard and unforgiving, but the ore is valuable. The Stoic trusts that the logos has provided both the rock and the ore for a reason. Your job is to do the work of extraction, to find the gold of wisdom, resilience, or redirection hidden within the hardship. This trust is a muscle that must be exercised, especially when life feels chaotic and cruel. It is a choice to believe in a fundamental benevolence underlying existence, even when evidence seems to suggest otherwise. So, I want you to try this act of trust right now. Cast your mind back to a past difficult event, one that you have perhaps never fully made peace with. It could be that job loss, a painful breakup, an illness, or a period of great uncertainty. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, see if you can gently look for the thread of purpose. Ask yourself, how did that event, as painful as it was, ultimately serve my development? Did it force me to develop a strength I did not know I had? Did it close a door that needed to be closed, even though I fought against it? Did it lead me to people, places, or an understanding of myself that I would never have found otherwise? You are not being asked to be grateful for the pain itself, but to recognize the role it played in the larger story of your life. By finding this thread, you are not just making peace with the past, you are training your mind to approach current and future challenges with this same profound trust. You are learning to see the hand of a cosmic sculptor, not an enemy, in the difficulties you face, knowing that each strike is shaping you for a purpose that is part of a beautiful, intelligent, and harmonious whole. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This jarring statement from Marcus Aurelius is not a threat or a morbid fixation. It is the heart of one of the most powerful and misunderstood Stoic practices, Memento Mori, a Latin phrase that translates to "remember you must die." At first glance, it might seem like a dark or depressing thought, but for the Stoics, it was the ultimate tool for clarity, urgency, and profound appreciation for life. They did not see death as a terrifying end to be avoided in thought, but as a constant, gentle advisor that helps us strip away the non-essential and focus on what is truly meaningful. The awareness of our mortality acts like a lens, bringing the important things into sharp focus while blurring out the trivial distractions that so often consume our energy and attention. It is the great equalizer, the perspective that reminds us that our time here is limited and incredibly precious, and that every moment we spend on anger, worry, or petty concerns is a moment we cannot get back. This practice was a common thread among all the Stoic philosophers. Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of contemplating death, arguing that we misunderstand life because we forget it is temporary. He said, "He who has learned to die has unlearned how to be a slave." His point was profound. When you fully accept the inevitability of your own death, you free yourself from the fear of losing external things, your status, your possessions, the approval of others. Why be a slave to these temporary conditions when you know they will all slip away? This realization does not lead to apathy, but to a fierce and focused vitality. It urges you to stop postponing your life, to stop saying, "I will be happy when," or "I will start that project someday." The Stoic reminder of mortality is a call to live with urgency, not the frantic urgency of panic, but the deliberate urgency of someone who knows the sun is setting and wants to make the most of the light that remains. It forces the question, if not now, when? Let's make this starkly practical. Think about a common, everyday source of frustration, being stuck in a traffic jam. The typical reaction involves gripping the steering wheel, sighing heavily, and feeling a rising tide of anger and impatience. We mentally calculate the minutes wasted, we fret about being late, and we allow this minor, uncontrollable delay to poison our mood, sometimes for hours. Now, let's apply the lens of Memento Mori. Imagine for a moment that you are not just any person in that traffic jam, but a person who has just received a terminal diagnosis with only a few precious months left to live. How does the traffic jam look now? Does the 10-minute delay still feel like a catastrophe? Or does it become a mere blip, an insignificant pause in the grand and limited tapestry of your remaining days? The person with a conscious awareness of their limited time would likely react with a shrug, or perhaps even use the forced pause as an opportunity to listen to a favorite piece of music, to call a loved one just to say hello, or simply to sit in quiet reflection. The event is identical, but the perspective transforms it completely. The adversity of the delay is rendered powerless because it is seen against the backdrop of something infinitely larger. This is the clarifying power of mortality. It acts as a filter for our actions and reactions. When faced with a minor irritation or a major setback, the Stoic practice is to ask, in the face of my inevitable death, how much does this truly matter? Will I care about this criticism, this financial hiccup, this social slight on my deathbed? Almost always, the answer is a resounding no. What will matter then are the echoes of a life well lived, the love we gave and received, the integrity with which we acted, the courage we showed in the face of difficulty, the moments of genuine connection and joy. Memento Mori does not encourage us to dwell on death. It compels us to magnify life. It pulls us out of the petty dramas of the ego and into the profound reality of our shared human condition. It is the ultimate tool for ensuring that our responses to adversity are proportionate, virtuous, and aligned with our deepest values, because we are constantly aware that our time to enact those values is finite. So, I invite you to try a simple but profound thought experiment. As you go about the rest of your day, carry this question with you. If I knew for certain that this was my last week, how would my priorities shift? What conversations would I make time for? What petty grievances would I instantly release? How would I choose to spend this afternoon? You do not need to act on every dramatic impulse, but simply observe the clarity that this perspective brings. Notice how the urge to complain about the weather or to hold a grudge suddenly seems foolish. Notice how the desire to tell someone you love them or to finally start that creative project feels more urgent. This is not about living in a state of constant, grim finality. It is about using the awareness of death as a compass, one that consistently points you back toward what is truly important. By remembering that we must die, we remember, most importantly, how we must live with purpose, with virtue, and with a deep, grateful appreciation for the irreplaceable gift of the present moment. What if you could be grateful for the very thing that is causing you pain? This question lies at the heart of another powerful Stoic practice, one that might seem like the ultimate contradiction, but is in fact a masterstroke of psychological resilience. We are not talking about a superficial, look on the bright side optimism that ignores real suffering. Instead, this is a disciplined, active search for the hidden assets within a liability, for the sliver of light that a difficult situation inevitably casts. It is the practice of finding genuine aspects of gratitude especially when circumstances appear to offer nothing but reasons for despair. The Stoics understood that our emotional state is not a direct result of external events, but of the judgments and focus we bring to them. By consciously shifting our focus from what has been taken away to what still remains, or even to what has been given through the difficulty itself, we perform a kind of mental alchemy. We transform the energy of resentment into the energy of appreciation, and in doing so, we reclaim a profound sense of agency over our inner world. Seneca, in his profound letters, repeatedly returns to this theme, arguing that gratitude is not just for times of plenty, but is most essential during times of lack. He writes, "Let us greedily enjoy our friends, because we do not know how long this privilege will be ours." This sentiment extends beyond friends to include our health, our abilities, and our very lives. He saw that the anticipation of loss, when paired with gratitude for the present moment, intensifies our appreciation for what we have. But he went even further, suggesting that bad fortune itself carries hidden goods. In one letter, he consoles a friend by pointing out that a period of exile or illness can force a clarity and a focus on internal riches that a comfortable life often obscures. The Stoic practice of gratitude, therefore, is a twofold action. It is both a deep savoring of the goods we currently possess, made more poignant by the awareness of their fragility, and a deliberate excavation of the value embedded within the hardship itself. It is about asking not, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What can this situation reveal that I was previously blind to?" Consider the experience of a serious but non-life-threatening illness. The immediate reality is one of pain, limitation, and frustration. It is easy and natural to focus entirely on the loss of energy, of routine, of freedom. But within that same experience, a Stoic would actively search for the grounds of gratitude. The illness forces a mandatory pause, a slowing down that our hectic lives rarely permit. In this quiet space, we might develop a deeper, more nuanced appreciation for the simple miracle of health that we took for granted for so long. The ability to take a deep breath without pain, to walk easily up a flight of stairs, to enjoy a meal with full taste. These ordinary functions become extraordinary gifts when viewed through the lens of their temporary absence. The adversity of the illness becomes the very thing that sharpens our perception, allowing us to see the abundance that was always there. Similarly, a professional failure, while a blow to the ego, can be a fertile ground for gratitude. It can reveal the loyalty of colleagues who offer support, clarify the aspects of your work you truly love versus those you merely tolerate, and provide the invaluable, if painful, lesson of what does not work. The failure becomes a ruthless but effective editor, cutting away misguided paths and pointing you toward a more authentic direction. This practice is not about denying the difficulty or the pain. It is about refusing to let the difficulty monopolize your entire field of vision. It is an act of conscious attention, of training your mind to spot the specks of gold in the mud. When you are in the midst of a challenge, your mind naturally gravitates toward the threat, magnifying it. The practice of gratitude is a deliberate counter move. It is like turning on a flashlight in a dark room. The darkness of the problem does not disappear, but now you can also see the solid furniture, the door, the things that remain stable and supportive. This shift in focus has a tangible effect on your resilience. Gratitude generates a different biochemical state than anxiety or despair. It calms the nervous system and opens the mind to creative problem solving. By finding something, however small, to be grateful for within the adversity, you are not surrendering to it. You are demonstrating that your inner freedom cannot be taken away. You are proving that your capacity to find meaning and value is independent of your external circumstances. So let's bring this directly into your life. I want you to bring to mind a current challenge, something that is causing you stress or pain. It could be a relationship strain, a financial pressure, a demanding workload, or a personal disappointment. Now, set aside the natural narrative of loss and frustration for just a moment. Ask yourself this specific question: within this very difficulty, what is one thing I can find to be genuinely grateful for? Perhaps it is the patience you are being forced to cultivate. Maybe it is the support of one person who has stood by you. It could be the clarity the problem has brought, revealing your true priorities. Or it might simply be the opportunity to practice courage, to prove to yourself that you can endure and navigate this storm. Identify that one point of light. Hold it in your mind, acknowledge it, feel the gratitude for it, however tentative it may feel. This small act is not a solution to the problem, but it is a crucial recalibration of your spirit. It is the first step in transforming the adversity from a weight that crushes you into a tool that forges you, by reminding you that even in the darkest moments, there is always something for which we can say, "This too I am grateful for." When faced with a great difficulty, ask yourself, what would a truly wise person do here? This simple but profound question is at the heart of another powerful Stoic practice, the use of moral exemplars. The Stoics understood that in the heat of the moment, when our own judgment is clouded by fear, anger, or pain, it can be incredibly difficult to see the virtuous path forward. Our emotions scream for one reaction, while reason whispers for another. To cut through this internal noise, they recommended having a go-to model of wisdom, a North Star to guide our moral compass when our own sense of direction falters. These figures, known as sages, were not mythical perfect beings, but real or historical individuals who demonstrated extraordinary integrity and character in the face of extreme adversity. By studying their lives and their choices, we create a mental template, a pre-rehearsed script for virtue that we can access when our own resolve is tested. It is like having a wise mentor on call in your mind, one whose example provides both inspiration and a practical standard to measure our own actions against. Epictetus, who taught his students through vivid, practical dialogues, constantly pointed to Socrates as the ultimate exemplar. He would urge his students, when confused or tempted by a difficult choice, to remember how Socrates conducted himself. He famously said, "You can be invincible if you never enter a contest where victory is not within your control." And then he would point to Socrates' death as the ultimate proof. Socrates, condemned to die by drinking hemlock, had every reason to be fearful, bitter, or desperate. Yet, as recorded by his student Plato, he spent his final hours in calm, philosophical discussion with his friends, expressing no hatred for his accusers and showing a serene acceptance of his fate. He was in complete control of the only thing that was truly his to control, his character. Epictetus's lesson was clear. If Socrates could face death with such equanimity, then surely we can face our comparatively smaller troubles, a critical comment, a financial setback, a social slight, with a fraction of that same courage and grace. The exemplar does not make our challenge disappear, but he shows us that it is possible to meet it with virtue. Another powerful historical figure revered by the Stoics was Cato the Younger. Where Socrates demonstrated calm acceptance, Cato embodied unyielding integrity. He was a Roman senator who stood almost alone against the rising dictatorship of Julius Caesar, believing Caesar's power grab would destroy the Roman Republic. When Caesar ultimately won the civil war, Cato found himself on the losing side. Rather than live under a tyranny he despised or beg for a pardon that would compromise his principles, he chose to take his own life. The Stoics, particularly Cato's admirer Seneca, did not celebrate his suicide lightly, but they revered the unwavering consistency of his character. Cato had lived his entire life according to a strict moral code, and he died by that same code. His life became a testament to the idea that some principles are worth more than life itself. For a Stoic, the lesson of Cato is not about the specific act, but about the incredible power of living in perfect alignment with one's virtues, even when the cost is ultimate. When we are tempted to compromise our integrity for a short-term gain or to avoid a conflict, we can ask, what would Cato do? This question forces us to consider the long-term cost to our character against the temporary discomfort of standing our ground. The beauty of this practice is its flexibility and personal application. You do not need to limit yourself to ancient philosophers or Roman statesmen. A sage can be anyone whose character you deeply admire. It could be a historical figure like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela, who demonstrated profound forgiveness and perseverance after enduring great injustice. It could be a modern figure like a specific teacher, a community leader, or even a family member who has faced hardship with incredible dignity and strength. The key is to choose someone whose specific virtues resonate with the challenges you face. If you struggle with patience, your exemplar might be someone known for their boundless calm. If you are working on courage, it might be someone who took a brave stand against overwhelming odds. Once you have chosen your exemplar, the next step is to actively study them. Read about their life, their struggles, and most importantly, their responses to adversity. Internalize their story until it becomes a part of your own mental furniture. So let's bring this directly into your life. Take a moment now to think of one person, either from history or from your own experience, who represents the kind of character you aspire to have, especially when things get tough. Who is your personal sage? It might be someone famous, or it might be a grandparent who endured hardship with quiet strength. Now, the next time you find yourself in a challenging situation, before you react, pause and consciously invoke their example. Ask yourself that guiding question: what would they do here? How would they handle this criticism, this failure, this temptation? This is not about trying to be someone else. It is about using their proven blueprint to access the best version of yourself. By modeling the sage, you are not following a script, you are learning a language, the language of virtue, from a fluent speaker, so that you can eventually speak it with your own authentic voice. The more you try to control external events, the less control you have. The more you focus on controlling your responses, the more powerful you become. This is the beautiful and liberating paradox that lies at the very heart of Stoic philosophy, a refinement of the dichotomy of control that we explored earlier. We often believe that power and freedom come from arranging the world to our liking, from ensuring that people act as we wish and that events unfold according to our plan. But this is a trap, a source of endless frustration and anxiety, because the external world is fundamentally fickle and unpredictable. The true source of adversity is rarely the event itself, but our fierce attachment to a specific outcome that lies outside our direct command. We suffer not because it rains on the day of our picnic, but because we were desperately attached to the idea of a sunny day. Our peace is shattered not because someone criticizes us, but because we are deeply attached to their approval. The Stoic path to freedom involves a profound shift, letting go of the exhausting and impossible task of managing the externals and turning our attention inward to the one domain where we are the absolute sovereign, the kingdom of our own mind, our judgments, and our intentions. Epictetus, who began his teachings with the foundational dichotomy of control, relentlessly drives this point home. He stated with unwavering clarity that our happiness and freedom depend entirely on correctly distinguishing what is ours from what is not. He taught that the chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that we can say to every external thing, "You are not within my power, you are external and independent." Our body is not entirely ours to control, nor is our property, our reputation, or the actions of other people, but our faculty of choice, our ability to assess, to intend, to desire, and to act with virtue. That is ours and ours alone. When we tie our happiness to the things we cannot control, we make ourselves hostages to fortune. We hand over the keys to our inner peace to every passing circumstance and every unpredictable person. But when we anchor our well-being to our own efforts, our integrity, and our virtuous intentions, we become unshakable. No one can prevent you from acting with courage. No market crash can take away your integrity, and no critic can force you to abandon your principles unless you willingly surrender them. Let's make this paradox intensely practical with a scenario that creates anxiety for almost everyone: a job interview. Consider two candidates preparing for the same important interview. The first candidate spends all their energy focused on the external outcome. They are obsessed with getting the job. They fantasize about the salary, the title, the approval it will bring. Their entire sense of self-worth becomes tied to this single result. In the interview itself, this focus makes them nervous and desperate. They try to say what they think the interviewers want to hear. They become flustered by challenging questions, interpreting them as threats to their desired outcome. If they are rejected, their world crumbles. They see it as a personal failure, a verdict on their entire worth. Their attempt to control the uncontrollable, the hiring committee's decision, has left them feeling powerless and defeated. Now, consider the second candidate, who has internalized the Stoic paradox. Their primary focus is not on getting the job, which is an external outcome. Instead, their goal is to perform to the best of their ability and to act with integrity throughout the process. They control their preparation. They research the company thoroughly. They prepare thoughtful questions. They practice articulating their skills. They control their intention to be honest, engaged, and professional. During the interview, this internal focus gives them a quiet confidence. They are not trying to control the interviewer's impressions. They are focused on expressing their genuine capabilities. They listen carefully and answer questions truthfully. If a difficult question arises, they see it as an opportunity to think clearly under pressure, not as a threat to a desired outcome. Whether they get the job or not, this candidate emerges with their self-respect intact. If they are successful, it is a welcome external addition. If they are not, they can reflect on the experience with equanimity, knowing they controlled what was theirs to control: their effort and their conduct. The outcome does not define them. The first candidate sought power by trying to command an external result and found anxiety. The second candidate found power by commanding their internal world and found freedom. This principle applies to virtually every area of life where we experience stress. In relationships, trying to control another person's feelings or actions leads to conflict and resentment. Shifting your focus to controlling your own communication, your own patience, and your own boundaries fosters healthy connection. In creative pursuits, obsessing over public recognition or commercial success can stifle creativity and lead to burnout. Focusing on the internal rewards of the creative process itself, the joy of mastering a skill, the satisfaction of honest expression sustains passion and leads to more authentic work. The paradox is that by releasing our grip on the outcomes we cannot control, we often perform better and, ironically, make those positive outcomes more likely. The relaxed, internally focused interviewee is more likely to make a genuine connection. The artist who creates for the love of it often produces their most compelling work. So let's bring this directly into your life. Take a moment to identify one specific area where you currently feel stressed, anxious, or frustrated. Now ask yourself this crucial question: am I overly focused on an external outcome that is not entirely within my power? It might be the desire for a specific person to like you, the need for a project to be universally praised, or the hope that a difficult situation will resolve itself in a particular way. Acknowledge that outcome, then make the conscious pivot. Ask yourself, what part of this is truly within my control? What can I control about my own preparation, my own attitude, my own actions, and my own responses right now? By shifting your attention and your energy to these internal factors, you are not giving up. You are stepping into your true power. You are moving from being a passenger who is anxious about the destination to being the driver who is focused on skillfully navigating the road, regardless of where it leads. This is the ultimate application of the precision tool, using the resistance of external desire to carve out a self that is defined not by what it acquires, but by how it acts. The day's challenges are the raw material. Your journal is the workshop where you sculpt your character. This nightly ritual of reflection is where the theoretical principles of Stoicism meet the messy reality of your life, transforming fleeting experiences into permanent lessons. It is the practice of turning the mirror on yourself, not with harsh criticism, but with the objective eye of a craftsman assessing their work. While we have explored powerful mental exercises and reframes, journaling provides the structure to make that learning deliberate and cumulative. It is the difference between randomly chipping away at a block of marble and having a detailed blueprint for the sculpture you intend to create. Each evening, you take the events of the day, the frustrations, the small successes, the moments of weakness, and you hold them up to the light of your values, asking not what happened to me, but what did I make of what happened? The most powerful model for this practice comes from the highest office in the ancient world. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations was never intended for publication. It was his private journal, a series of notes and reminders he wrote to himself, often while on military campaigns far from Rome. In its pages, we see a man constantly applying Stoic principles to the immense pressures of leadership, grief, and physical pain. He was not writing as an emperor to an audience, but as a student to himself, rehearsing his philosophy to steady his mind. His journal was his inner citadel's maintenance log, a place to fortify his resolve and scrutinize his impulses. This is the ultimate testament to the power of the practice. It is not for beginners alone, but a lifelong tool for even the most advanced practitioner. It is where you, like Marcus Aurelius, can have a conversation with your highest self, preparing for the day ahead by learning from the one that has just passed. A simple and profoundly effective structure for this practice revolves around three core questions. The first is, what did I do well today in accordance with virtue? This question is crucial because we are often quick to criticize ourselves but slow to acknowledge our progress. Perhaps you managed to pause before sending an angry email, choosing a more measured response. Maybe you demonstrated patience with a difficult family member, or you acted with integrity in a situation where cutting corners would have been easier. Celebrating these moments, however small, reinforces the neural pathways of virtuous behavior. It tells your mind, this is the direction we are moving in. This is what strength looks like. The second question is, where did I fall short and what could I improve? This is not an invitation for self-flagellation, but for clear-eyed, constructive analysis. Here, you might examine a moment where you lost your temper or acted out of fear. The key is to focus on the specific action and the judgment that led to it, not to label yourself as a failure. You are dissecting the event to understand the mechanism of your reaction, so you can adjust it next time. The third and perhaps most important question is, what adversities did I face and how did I respond? This is where you apply all the tools we have discussed. Take one specific challenge from your day and break it down. Begin with objective perception. What were the bare facts of the situation, stripped of your emotional narrative? Then assess your response through the lens of the disciplines. Did you give immediate assent to a negative impression, or did you create a pause? Did you view the obstacle as an opportunity to practice a specific virtue? Did you manage to see the event from a broader perspective? This process turns a single frustrating incident into a case study for your own growth. For example, imagine your adversity was a last-minute request from your boss that disrupted your evening plans. Your initial internal reaction might have been resentment. In your journal, you would acknowledge that reaction, but then you would explore a more virtuous path. You could reframe it as an opportunity to practice adaptability and professionalism. You could note that while the request was outside your control, your attitude and the quality of your work were not. This nightly review transforms a minor annoyance from a waste of time into a focused training session for your character. The beauty of this practice is its accessibility. You do not need a leather-bound book or hours of free time. A simple notebook and just 5 minutes each evening are enough to create a transformative habit. The goal is consistency, not volume. Start by focusing on just one of the 3 questions if that feels more manageable. The act of writing itself is powerful. It forces clarity and slows down your thinking, allowing you to process events more deeply than if they simply swirled in your head. Over time, this journal becomes more than a record. It becomes a map of your moral progress. You can look back on entries from months or years ago and see how your responses to similar challenges have evolved. You will have tangible evidence of your growth, a source of encouragement during difficult periods. So, the challenge for you is this: tonight, before you go to sleep, take 5 minutes. Find a quiet space with a notebook or even a notes app on your phone. Think back over your day and select one moment of difficulty, however small. Then walk through those 3 questions. What did you do well? What could you improve? And with that specific adversity, how did you respond? And how might you apply a Stoic principle more effectively next time? Do not aim for perfection, aim for honest reflection. This small investment of time is where you actively take the chisel in your own hands. You are no longer just reading about Stoicism. You are practicing it, using the raw material of your own life to consciously and deliberately sculpt a character of resilience, wisdom, and peace. Your adversity is not yours alone. It is a thread in the larger tapestry of human experience. This idea leads us to one of the most beautiful and socially conscious concepts in Stoicism, the principle of Sympatheia. This is the profound recognition that we are all fundamentally connected, part of a single, living whole. The Stoics saw the universe as a single, rational entity, a cosmos bound together by a shared nature. Just as the limbs of a single body work in concert for the good of the whole, so too are human beings designed for cooperation and mutual support. When we truly internalize this, it transforms our relationship with adversity, both our own and that of others. It moves us from a mindset of isolated suffering to one of shared humanity. Your personal struggle, no matter how unique it feels, is not an anomaly. It is a variation on a theme that has played out in countless lives throughout history. Recognizing this does not diminish your pain, but it can dissolve the lonely illusion that you are suffering alone. This sense of connection becomes a wellspring of strength, reminding us that our challenges are part of the universal human condition. Marcus Aurelius consistently drew upon this idea to ground himself amidst the immense pressures of leadership. He would remind himself, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." He saw his own well-being as inextricably linked to the health of the entire Roman Empire. In another passage, he urges himself to remember that we are made for cooperation, like feet, hands, and eyelids. To act against this natural, social impulse is to live in conflict not just with others, but with our own fundamental nature. This perspective fosters a deep and genuine empathy. When we see someone else in pain, instead of feeling separate or perhaps even secretly relieved it is not us, the Stoic training in Sympatheia encourages us to see their struggle as our own. We are all vulnerable to the same slings and arrows of fortune, loss, illness, disappointment, fear. This shared vulnerability is the bedrock of compassion. It allows us to look at another person's suffering and genuinely feel, "That could be me," or more accurately, "In a way, that is me," because their pain diminishes the whole of which I am a part. This shift in perspective has incredibly practical applications for navigating our own difficulties. When you are in the grip of a personal crisis, it is easy to become myopic, to feel as though your problem is the biggest and most important thing in the world. The weight of it can feel crushing in its isolation. This is the moment to consciously invoke the principle of Sympatheia. Take a step back and consider the vast network of human experience happening simultaneously all around you. In your city, in your country, across the globe, millions of people are facing challenges similar to or far greater than your own. Some are dealing with profound loss, others with illness, poverty, or injustice. This is not meant to minimize your struggle by saying, "Others have it worse." That is a form of invalidating your own experience. The purpose is entirely different. It is to connect your struggle to the collective human experience. It is to realize that the feeling of pain, the ache of uncertainty, the burden of grief, these are universal emotions. You are not an island of suffering in a sea of contentment. You are participating in a shared reality that every human being will confront in their own way. This realization can be incredibly liberating. It replaces the loneliness of adversity with a sense of solidarity. It can transform self-pity into a resilient understanding that you are enduring something that is simply part of being human. Furthermore, this concept naturally leads us to virtuous action. When we see our own struggles reflected in others, it can motivate us to reach out and offer help. The Stoics believed that acting for the common good was not just a nice thing to do, it was an expression of our true nature. Helping another person who is struggling is a practical way to affirm our interconnectedness. It is also a powerful way to heal ourselves. In the midst of your own adversity, performing an act of kindness for someone else can provide a profound sense of purpose and perspective. It gets you out of your own head and reminds you of your capacity to bring good into the world, even when you are hurting. Your pain can become a source of empathy that allows you to connect with and comfort others in a way that would be impossible from a place of untroubled ease. In this way, adversity, when viewed through the lens of Sympatheia, becomes a catalyst for compassion, strengthening the bonds of community and allowing us to become a source of strength for each other. So let's bring this concept into your life right now. Bring to mind a challenge you are currently facing. It might feel intensely personal and private. Now, I want you to gently expand your view. Consider how this challenge connects you to the broader human experience. What universal aspects of being human does it touch upon? Is it about the fear of the unknown, the pain of rejection, the struggle for security, or the ache of loss? Now think about the countless other people, both in this moment and throughout history, who have faced a version of this same core human experience. Can you feel a sense of solidarity with them? Can you see your struggle not as a solitary burden, but as a shared passage? This simple act of mental connection can be a powerful antidote to the isolation that adversity so often brings. It reminds us that we are all in this together, navigating the complexities of life, and that our individual threads, no matter how tangled they may seem, are woven into the strong, enduring fabric of a shared human story. Seneca cuts to the heart of a universal anxiety with a startling and precise correction. He writes, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Think about the profound truth in that distinction. Our complaint is often about the quantity of our days, but the real poverty lies in the quality of our attention. We act as if we have an endless supply of tomorrows, postponing what matters and investing our most precious resource, our time, into pursuits that leave us empty. The Stoic emphasis on life's brevity, on Memento Mori, is not meant to paralyze us with fear, but to ignite us with a fierce and purposeful urgency. If you truly internalize that this day, this hour, this very moment is a finite and non-renewable asset, it revolutionizes how you choose to spend it. Suddenly, the way we respond to adversity becomes a critical test of this understanding. To dwell on a setback, to nurse a grudge, to spend days or weeks simmering in resentment over a criticism or a failure, is not just an emotional reaction, it is a profound and costly waste of your life. You are literally trading your limited time for the temporary indulgence of bitterness. Seneca's entire essay on the shortness of life is a masterful exploration of this theme. He paints a vivid picture of people who are busy yet idle, who fill their calendars with social obligations, petty ambitions, and mindless entertainment, all while complaining that life is short. He argues that life is long enough if you know how to use it, but we squander it by allowing others to dictate our time and by focusing on things that are ultimately unimportant. He observes that we are often thrifty with our money but extravagant with our time, the one thing we can never get back. This Stoic perspective forces a brutal audit of our daily lives. Every minute spent ruminating on an injustice, anxiously worrying about an outcome we cannot control, or complaining about a circumstance is a minute lost forever. It is a minute that could have been invested in learning, in creating, in connecting with loved ones, or in taking a single small step toward a meaningful goal. Adversity, in this light, presents a clear choice. You can use the event as fuel for lamentation, which consumes time, or you can use it as fuel for growth, which invests time. Consider two starkly different responses to a common professional setback. Imagine two individuals who both receive the same harsh, perhaps even unfair, criticism from their manager. The first person spends the entire week consumed by it. They replay the conversation endlessly in their mind, crafting perfect rebuttals that will never be delivered. They vent to friends and family, seeking validation for their wounded pride. They lie awake at night, their mind racing with anger and anxiety. By the end of the week, they are emotionally drained, and no constructive work has been accomplished. They have effectively paid a week of their life for the privilege of being angry. Now consider the second person who has absorbed the Stoic sense of urgency. They feel the initial sting of the criticism, of course, but within hours they make a conscious choice. They ask themselves the pivotal question, what can I learn from this? Even if the delivery was poor, is there a grain of truth here that can make me better? They might spend an hour reflecting objectively, then decide on a course of action, perhaps to schedule a calm follow-up conversation for clarification, or to focus on improving a specific skill. Then they deliberately redirect their energy. They pour themselves into their work with renewed focus. They use the experience to practice humility, or they invest time in a personal project that brings them joy and a sense of mastery. At the end of the same week, this person has not only weathered the storm but has grown from it. They have invested their time in building resilience and competence. This is the urgency of virtuous action. It means treating time as your most valuable currency and asking of every situation, especially the difficult ones, how can I spend this moment well? When adversity strikes, it is like an unplanned withdrawal from your time account. The Stoic does not frantically try to reverse the transaction, which is impossible. Instead, they immediately look for the highest yield investment they can make with the time that remains. The obstacle itself becomes the bank where you deposit your effort and attention, earning interest in the form of strengthened character. Wasting time on adversity is like holding a winning lottery ticket and spending all your time complaining about the scratchy paper it's printed on, instead of cashing it in and using the funds to build the life you want. The lesson is the prize. The opportunity to practice patience, courage, or wisdom is the windfall. To focus on the pain of the scratchy paper is to miss the point entirely. So let's bring this sense of urgency directly into your present moment. I want you to think about a current adversity, a situation that is occupying your mental space. It might be a conflict, a worry, a disappointment. Now, with Seneca's words in mind, conduct a quick audit. How much of your time and mental energy over the past few days has been dedicated to dwelling on this problem versus actively learning from it or moving beyond it? Be honest with yourself. Have you been investing your time or wasting it? If you find that you have been spending more than is necessary on lamentation, see this not as a failure but as a wake-up call. The awareness itself is the first step toward reclamation. Now, make a conscious decision to reallocate that energy. What is one small, purposeful action you could take right now that would represent a better investment? It could be as simple as writing down one lesson learned, taking a 10-minute walk to clear your head and gain perspective, or sending a single email that moves a solution forward. The action itself is less important than the intentional shift from passive suffering to active engagement. This is how you honor the shortness of life, not by fearing the end, but by making every moment, especially the difficult ones, count toward the person you are becoming. Courage is not the lack of fear, it is the judgment that something else is more important than fear. This definition shatters the common misconception that brave people are somehow immune to the visceral sensations of anxiety or dread. The Stoics saw courage not as an emotion but as a virtue, a strength of character that is demonstrated through action, particularly when action is difficult. Fear is a natural biological signal, a relic of our ancient wiring designed to keep us safe from physical harm. In the modern world, this alarm system often gets triggered by non-lethal threats to our ego, our social standing, or our comfort. Stoic courage does not ask you to silence this alarm, but to listen to it, assess it with reason, and then make a conscious choice. The courageous person feels the knot in their stomach, the quickening of their pulse, and then they ask the pivotal question, does this fear point to a genuine physical danger, or is it a signal of an opportunity to do something virtuous? When reason concludes that the virtuous action is the right path, courage is what allows you to move forward, carrying the fear with you rather than being paralyzed by it. This virtue was considered one of the 4 cardinal pillars of Stoicism, essential for a life lived in accordance with nature. Without courage, the other virtues, wisdom, justice, and temperance, can remain theoretical, easily abandoned when their practice becomes difficult or frightening. It takes courage to speak the truth when a lie is easier, to stand for justice when it is unpopular, to exercise temperance when indulgence is tempting. The Stoics understood that a life of virtue would inevitably involve friction with the world. Courage is the quality that allows us to lean into that friction rather than retreat from it. It is the fuel that powers our moral convictions, enabling us to translate our principles from private thoughts into public actions. As Seneca noted, sometimes even to live is an act of courage, especially when faced with periods of despair or great difficulty. It is the daily, quiet courage of getting out of bed and facing the day's challenges with integrity that often matters most, not just the dramatic, once-in-a-lifetime bravery celebrated in stories. Consider a scenario that fills many of us with a specific kind of social fear, the prospect of speaking up in an important meeting. You are sitting around a table, perhaps with senior colleagues or clients, and a discussion is unfolding about a critical project. You have an idea, a different perspective that you believe is valuable, but it contradicts the prevailing opinion or the view of a dominant personality in the room. The fear is immediate and palpable. Your heart starts to beat faster. Your mind races with negative predictions. What if I sound foolish? What if they dismiss my idea? What if this damages my reputation? This is the moment where the Stoic discipline of courage is put to the test. The initial, fearful impression is shouting for you to stay silent, to avoid the risk. This is where you insert the pause, the moment of assent we discussed earlier. You acknowledge the fear, it is real, and its purpose is to protect your social standing, but then you bring in reason. You ask yourself, what is more important here? Is it more important to avoid the temporary discomfort of potential embarrassment? Or is it more important to contribute an idea that could genuinely benefit the project and the team? Reason assesses that the potential value of the idea outweighs the risk to your ego. The something else that is more important than fear is the virtue of contributing to the common good, of acting with integrity to your own insights. So you take a breath and you speak. Your voice might waver slightly. The fear does not magically vanish, but you act anyway. This is Stoic courage in its purest form. It is not the absence of butterflies, but the ability to make them fly in formation. The action itself is the courageous part. Afterward, regardless of the outcome, whether your idea is embraced or challenged, you have won a much more important victory. You have strengthened your courageous character. You have proven to yourself that you can act in accordance with reason, even when your emotions are pulling you in the opposite direction. Each time you do this, you build a deeper self-trust, a confidence that when the next, perhaps even larger, fear arises, you have the capacity to face it. The meeting room becomes your training ground, and the fear of speaking up becomes the precise tool you use to forge a more courageous self. Now, bring this concept into your own life. I want you to identify one situation right now where you feel fear is holding you back. It might not be as public as a meeting. It could be a difficult conversation you need to have with a loved one, the fear of starting a new fitness routine, or the anxiety around applying for a job that feels like a stretch. First, acknowledge the fear without judgment. Name it, then engage your reason. Ask yourself, what is the virtuous action that my fear is trying to prevent me from taking? Is it the action of honesty in that conversation? Is it the action of caring for your health through exercise? Is it the action of pursuing growth and mastery in your career? Once you have identified that virtuous action, weigh it against the fear, which is truly more important in the long run, succumbing to the temporary discomfort of fear, or taking a step toward a life of greater integrity, health, or purpose. The answer, guided by reason, will point you toward the path of courage. The first step might be small: scheduling the conversation, putting on your running shoes, drafting the application, but it is a step taken with your eyes open, a step that affirms your commitment to living not by fear, but by what is right. Adversity often provokes a desire to lash out or overindulge. Temperance is the muscle that holds you back. When life feels heavy and chaotic, our instincts can pull us toward extremes. We might feel an overwhelming urge to vent our frustration in a sharp, hurtful comment, or we might seek to numb the discomfort by escaping into a pleasure, be it food, shopping, or distraction. These impulses are natural, human reactions to stress. They are the mind's quick fix solutions for regaining a sense of control or comfort. But the Stoics identified this exact moment of temptation as a critical training ground for one of their 4 cardinal virtues, temperance, which is the practice of moderation and self-restraint. It is not about denying yourself pleasure or becoming austere. It is about mastering your impulses so that you, not they, are in command of your actions. Temperance is what allows you to choose a response rather than simply react to a feeling. It is the inner discipline that maintains your equilibrium when external pressures are trying to knock you off balance. This virtue is the essential counterweight to the pull of our desires. The Stoics understood that an uncontrolled appetite, whether for revenge, for rich food, or for lavish spending, makes us a slave to that very thing. Epictetus taught that freedom is not achieved by satisfying every craving, but by conquering them. He said that a person who is mastered by their desires is like a dog tied to a cart. They are dragged along whether they want to be or not. Temperance is the virtue that cuts the leash. It is the power to say enough when a part of you is screaming for more. In the context of adversity, this becomes incredibly powerful. The difficulty itself creates a kind of emotional vacuum, and our instincts rush to fill it with something, anything, that feels good or powerful in the moment. Temperance is the calm voice of reason that intervenes, reminding you that true strength is not found in the temporary relief of an outburst or a binge, but in the sustained power of self-command. It ensures that your character is not weakened by the very challenges that are meant to strengthen it. Let's make this concrete with a scenario that will resonate with almost everyone. Imagine you have had a truly terrible day. A major project at work has fallen through, a client was unreasonably difficult, and you come home feeling drained, unappreciated, and frustrated. The adversity is real, the professional setback, the emotional exhaustion. As you sit there, a powerful impulse arises, the urge for emotional relief. You might find yourself scrolling through online shopping sites, feeling the temptation to buy something expensive you do not need, simply for the fleeting thrill of a purchase. Or perhaps you are drawn to the refrigerator or the pantry, seeking comfort in food beyond what your body actually requires. The impulse whispers a persuasive lie: you deserve this. This will make you feel better. This is the critical juncture. The intemperate response is to give in immediately. You click buy now or you eat the entire carton of ice cream. For a moment, there is a rush, a sense of agency. But soon after, often comes a secondary wave of negativity, regret, guilt, a credit card bill you did not need, or a stomach ache. The adversity of the bad day has now been compounded by a loss of self-respect. Now let's apply the Stoic virtue of temperance. You feel the same impulse, the same craving for comfort, but instead of automatically obeying it, you pause. You recognize it for what it is, a desire to escape an uncomfortable feeling. You engage the discipline of assent, withholding your immediate agreement to the thought that shopping or overeating is the solution. Then you consciously choose a temperate response. This does not mean you deny yourself all comfort. It means you choose a measured, constructive form of it. Instead of impulsive shopping, you might allocate a small, reasonable amount for a treat later in the week, turning a reactive splurge into a planned, mindful reward. Instead of mindless eating, you might prepare a healthy, nourishing meal, acting with care for your body. Or you might choose a different outlet entirely, like going for a walk to clear your head or calling a friend to talk things through. The temperate action is one that addresses the root of the problem, your need for restoration without creating a new problem. It is a response that leaves you stronger, not weaker, once the moment has passed. By choosing temperance, you are not just avoiding a bad decision. You are actively building the muscle of self-control, proving to yourself that your peace does not depend on external comforts. This practice extends far beyond consumption. Temperance is equally vital in managing our emotional reactions. The impulse to lash out in anger when criticized or to sink into self-pity when things go wrong is another form of intemperance. It is an overindulgence in an emotion. The temperate response is to feel the anger or the sadness without letting it dictate your behavior. It is the space between the feeling and the action where you choose a measured, proportional response. This is how temperance works hand in hand with the other virtues. It provides the calm center from which courage can act wisely, from which justice can be fair, and from which wisdom can see clearly. It is the stabilizing force that prevents the other strengths of character from being hijacked by raw, unchecked passion. So, I encourage you to bring this awareness into your own life. As you move through your day, pay close attention to the moments of minor adversity. Notice where you feel the pull toward excess. Is it the temptation to spend too long scrolling on your phone when you are avoiding a difficult task? Is it the urge to have one more drink when you are feeling socially anxious? Is it the impulse to make a sarcastic remark when you are irritated? Identify one specific area where adversity typically tempts you to lose your sense of measure. Now consider what a temperate alternative would look like in that situation. It does not have to be a dramatic change. It could be as simple as taking 3 deep breaths before responding to a provoking email, or deciding to drink a glass of water before reaching for a snack. The goal is to introduce a moment of choice where there was once only automatic reaction. Each time you successfully exercise this muscle of restraint, you are not just avoiding a mistake, you are actively sculpting a character that remains steady and in command, no matter what pressures the world brings to your door. How do you treat someone who has caused you difficulty? The Stoic answer is simple yet profoundly challenging: with justice. This might seem counterintuitive. When we are wronged, our primal instincts cry out for retaliation, for a balancing of the scales through some form of payback. We feel that justice means making the other person feel the pain they have inflicted upon us. But the Stoics proposed a radical redefinition of this virtue. For them, justice is not about retribution. It is about acting with fairness, reason, and a concern for the common good, even and especially when we have been treated unfairly. It is the virtue that guides our interactions within the human community, and it is put to its ultimate test not when things are easy, but when we have a compelling reason to be unjust. This is where adversity becomes the anvil upon which our commitment to justice is forged. When someone is the direct source of our hardship, the temptation to abandon fairness is immense. But the Stoic understands that to respond to harm with harm is to become part of the very problem you are protesting. It perpetuates a cycle of disorder and injury, adding your own vice to the world instead of contributing the antidote of virtue. Marcus Aurelius, who was constantly surrounded by political intrigue and faced betrayal from those he trusted, constantly meditated on this principle. In his meditations, he offers a powerful and recurring reminder to himself when dealing with difficult people. He writes, "When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come of it." If you understand that, you'll feel sympathy rather than outrage. And in another passage, he adds the crucial Stoic insight: the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. His approach is not one of passive weakness, but of active understanding. He forces himself to see the other person's action not as a personal attack from a purely evil actor, but as a mistake stemming from a flawed judgment. The person who wrongs you, from the Stoic perspective, is acting from a place of error or ignorance about what is truly good. They believe that harming you will bring them some benefit, perhaps power, status, or the silencing of a dissenting voice. They are confused, mistaking an external advantage for the true good, which is virtue. Retaliating in anger does not correct this error. It only confirms their distorted worldview that life is a brutal contest of power. Responding with justice, however, introduces a different reality into the situation, one based on principle, not passion. Let's bring this down from the imperial court to a scenario you might recognize. Imagine a colleague at work takes credit for an idea you developed during a team meeting. The project lead praises them, and you are left sitting in silence, your contribution erased. The initial surge of anger is intense and justified. The impulse is to immediately expose them, to send a sharp email to the project lead detailing the theft, to corner your colleague and demand an apology. This reactive path feels like justice, it feels like setting the record straight, but let's examine it through the Stoic lens. What is the virtuous response? Justice in this context is not about your colleague getting their comeuppance. It is about restoring truth and fairness to the situation in a way that serves the common good of the team and upholds your own character. A reactive public shaming might feel satisfying in the short term, but it is likely to create lasting animosity, damage team cohesion, and make you appear aggressive. The Stoic path of justice would involve a more measured, principled approach. First, you would manage your own impressions, withholding immediate assent to the narrative of "this is a personal war." You would pause and consider the possibility of error. Perhaps your colleague misspoke or genuinely forgot the origin of the idea. Then, you would choose an action aimed at fairness and truth, not humiliation. This might mean requesting a private conversation with a colleague. Instead of launching an accusation, you could approach it with clarity and calmness. "I noticed that in the meeting, you presented the idea we discussed last week. I was surprised my contribution wasn't mentioned, and I want to make sure we're both aligned on how we communicate our collaborative work moving forward." This response seeks to correct the injustice without creating a new one. It gives the other person a chance to correct their mistake with dignity. It focuses on the common good, maintaining a functional working relationship rather than on personal vengeance. If the colleague reacts defensively, the Stoic would still not escalate. The virtuous act was in making the fair and reasonable attempt. The outcome, as always, is not within your full control. But your commitment to justice is. By acting this way, you demonstrate that your integrity is not dependent on the actions of others. You refuse to let their poor character dictate your own. This practice of justice under fire is perhaps the most socially transformative application of Stoicism. It moves us from being mere reactors in a chain of cause and effect to being intentional actors who insert wisdom and fairness into difficult social dynamics. It recognizes that the health of our communities depends on individuals choosing to break cycles of retaliation. Every time we respond to pettiness with grace, to deception with honesty, or to aggression with calm reason, we are not just managing a single conflict. We are contributing a small dose of order to a world that often tilts toward chaos. We are proving that it is possible to stand firm for what is right without resorting to the very tactics we condemn. So, take a moment to reflect on a past conflict where you felt genuinely wronged. It could be a professional slight, a personal betrayal, or a heated argument with a family member. Replay the scene in your mind. What was your initial gut reaction? Now, with the benefit of hindsight and this Stoic framework, consider an alternative path. Ask yourself, could I have responded in a way that was more focused on fairness and the long-term health of the relationship, rather than on the immediate satisfaction of being right or making the other person feel my displeasure? What would a just response, divorced from the heat of anger, have looked like? This is not an exercise in self-criticism, but in learning. By examining our past reactions, we equip ourselves to make more virtuous choices the next time adversity wears a human face. We prepare ourselves to meet harm not with more harm, but with the disarming power of unwavering integrity. Wisdom is the ability to see, in the heat of adversity, that your character is the only true good being tested. All the other virtues we have discussed, courage, temperance, justice, are powerful tools, but they require a master craftsman to wield them correctly. That master is wisdom. It is the virtue that informs all the others, the guiding light that cuts through the fog of a difficult situation to reveal the one thing that truly matters. When you are faced with a challenge, your mind is often pulled in a dozen directions by fear, desire, and social pressure. Wisdom is the quiet, steady voice that brings you back to the fundamental Stoic truth. The only real good is a virtuous character, and the only real bad is a vicious one. Everything else, wealth or poverty, praise or criticism, comfort or discomfort, is merely preferred or dispreferred, but ultimately indifferent to your flourishing. Wisdom is what allows you to make that distinction in real time, to navigate the storm without losing sight of the North Star of your own integrity. The Stoics defined the good with breathtaking simplicity and rigor. They argued that the ultimate good, the summum bonum, is virtue itself, living in accordance with reason and nature, which means acting with excellence of character. Everything external to your will, every event and circumstance, is classified as an indifferent. Now, this is a radical idea that often gets misunderstood. The Stoics were not saying that health, friendship, or financial security are worthless. They called these things preferred indifference because it is perfectly rational to prefer health over sickness, just as it is rational to prefer a smooth sailing journey over a stormy one. However, your ultimate good, your happiness, does not depend on achieving the preferred indifference. Your good depends solely on how you choose to navigate the journey, regardless of the weather. Wisdom is the faculty that constantly reminds you of this hierarchy. It is what prevents you from sacrificing your integrity, a true good, for the sake of a promotion, a preferred indifferent, because you understand that to do so would be a catastrophic trade, like swapping a diamond for a piece of glass. Consider a complex professional dilemma that pits a clear short-term advantage against a fundamental principle of integrity. Imagine you discover a significant error in a financial report that your team has already submitted to a major client. The error actually makes your team's performance look better than it was, and it is unlikely the client will ever spot it. Correcting the mistake, however, will require admitting the error publicly, potentially damaging your team's reputation and jeopardizing a lucrative contract. The pressure from your colleagues and even your manager might be to stay quiet, to let it slide. This is precisely the kind of situation where wisdom must intervene. Without it, the calculation is simple but flawed. The short-term advantage is keeping the contract and avoiding embarrassment. The perceived good is the external reward. But wisdom forces a deeper, more demanding calculation. It asks, what is the true good being tested here? It is not the client contract, it is your honesty. It is your commitment to truth, even when it is inconvenient or costly. Wisdom clarifies that winning in this scenario is not about securing the contract. It is about emerging from the situation with your integrity intact. It recognizes that a temporary professional setback is a dispreferred, indifferent, manageable, and survivable. But a compromise of your character is a true loss, a corrosion of your inner citadel. This is why wisdom is the master virtue. It provides the correct map for the terrain. Courage without wisdom might lead you to fight for the wrong thing. Justice without wisdom might be applied unfairly. Temperance without wisdom could become pointless austerity, but wisdom infuses every action with purpose and clarity. It is the difference between simply reacting to events and responding to them with philosophical understanding. In the heat of the moment, when your heart is pounding and the easy path is beckoning, wisdom is the mental discipline that allows you to pause and ask the most important question: what does a good human being do here? The answer will never be to lie, to cheat, or to harm others for personal gain, because those actions are fundamentally at odds with a rational and social nature. The answer will always point toward the path that strengthens virtue, even if it leads through the valley of external difficulty. So, let's bring this lens directly to a challenge you are facing right now. I want you to think about a current problem, a dilemma where you feel torn between what is easy and what feels right. It might be a decision at work, a conflict in a relationship, or a personal goal you are pursuing. Now apply the test of Stoic wisdom. Ask yourself this reframing question: in this situation, what does winning truly mean for my character, not just for my circumstances? Set aside the desired outcome for a moment, the approval you seek, the money you want to make, the conflict you want to avoid. Instead, focus on the person you want to be during this process and on the other side of it. Does winning mean acting with honesty, even if it leads to a difficult conversation? Does it mean practicing courage by standing up for a principle? Does it mean demonstrating justice by treating someone fairly, even if they have not treated you that way? When you define victory in terms of your virtue, the path forward often becomes astonishingly clear. The external obstacles cease to be barriers and transform into the very exercises chosen by your wiser self to build the strength you are meant to have. This is the ultimate power of wisdom. It turns every adversity into a pop quiz on your philosophy, and in doing so, it ensures that no matter what the world throws at you, you are always studying for the right exam. Draw two circles in your mind: a large outer one that contains all the things you worry about, and a smaller inner one nestled inside it for the things you can actually control. Now take an honest look at your mental and emotional energy. Where are you spending most of your time? Are you anxiously pacing the perimeter of that vast outer circle, fretting over global events, other people's opinions, and unpredictable outcomes? Or are you standing firmly within the compact inner circle, actively tending to your own thoughts, your efforts, and your responses? This powerful visual, popularized by Stephen Covey, is a brilliant modern map of a territory the Stoics explored thousands of years ago. It gives us a simple, intuitive way to understand where our power truly lies, and more importantly, where we are most likely to waste it. That feeling of anxiety, of being overwhelmed and powerless, almost always comes from focusing our precious energy on the large circle of concern. We stare at the storm raging outside and feel ourselves being battered by the wind and rain. but empowerment, calm, and genuine effectiveness are found when we turn our attention inward to the circle of influence. This is the space where we are the architects, where our actions have direct and meaningful consequences. It is the ultimate application of the Stoic dichotomy of control, a practical tool for managing the daily drain of worry and redirecting that energy into constructive action. This idea is a direct descendant of the core teaching from Epictetus that we started with. He began his Enchiridion by distinguishing between what is up to us and what is not. The large circle of concern is a perfect representation of everything that is not up to us. The weather, the economy, the past, the actions of other people, the final outcome of our endeavors. The small circle of influence is a map of what is up to us. Our opinions, our aims, our desires, our aversions, and most critically, the character of our actions. When we spend our days ruminating on the large circle, we are essentially trying to command the ocean tides with our bare hands. It is an exhausting and futile effort that leaves us feeling drained and defeated. But when we consciously pull our focus back to the small circle, we are like a sailor who cannot control the wind, but can always adjust the sails. We stop trying to change the unchangeable and start working with the material we have been given, which is our own capacity for reasoned choice and virtuous effort. The shift is not one of resignation, but of strategic reallocation. Let's apply this to a source of significant modern anxiety, the political climate. It is easy to feel a sense of despair or constant anger when watching the news, scrolling through social media, or following the latest political drama. The outer circle of concern here is enormous. It contains election results, legislative decisions, international conflicts, and the polarized opinions of millions. If you place all your energy here, obsessing over every headline and feeling your emotional state rise and fall with each political twist, you will quickly burn out. You are trying to control an ocean with a teacup, but what does your circle of influence look like within this vast concern? It is smaller, but it is potent. It contains your own education, taking the time to research candidates and issues from reliable sources. It includes your vote, your voluntary participation in the democratic process. It encompasses your ability to engage in respectful, rational dialogue with people who hold different views, perhaps changing one mind or simply fostering understanding instead of division. It even includes your choice to support local community organizations that address issues you care about at a grassroots level. Your circle of influence does not allow you to single-handedly determine a national election, but it does allow you to be an informed, principled, and active citizen. By focusing your energy here, you move from being a passive, anxious spectator to an active, grounded participant. You are doing what you can, and in doing so, you retain your peace and your power. The true magic of this practice is that the more you focus on your circle of influence, the more it tends to expand. Think of it like building a muscle. When you consistently work within your sphere of control, when you choose a calm response instead of an angry one, when you take a small, tangible step toward a goal instead of worrying about the final outcome, you build confidence and competence. This often has a ripple effect on the world around you. Your calm demeanor might de-escalate a tense situation. Your well-researched argument might persuade a colleague. Your consistent efforts might inspire others to join your cause. The circle of influence is not a fixed boundary. It is a flexible membrane that can grow as your capability and character grow. Conversely, neglecting your circle of influence to fret over the uncontrollable causes that circle to shrink, you feel more powerless and therefore you act less, which in turn makes you feel even more powerless. It is a vicious cycle that the Stoic practice of focusing on the inner circle is designed to break. So let's make this intensely personal. I want you to take a moment and bring to mind your top 3 worries right now. They could be related to your health, your finances, your relationships, or your work. Now, grab a piece of paper or just visualize this mentally. For each worry, draw the 2 circles. In the large outer circle, write down all the aspects of that worry that are truly outside your direct control. For a financial worry, this might include the state of the economy, inflation rates, or a potential company layoff. For a relationship worry, it might include the other person's feelings, their past actions, or their willingness to change. Be ruthlessly honest about what you cannot control. Now turn your attention to the smaller, inner circle. What aspects of this situation are within your control? Your circle of influence might include creating a detailed budget, researching new job opportunities, or developing a new skill to increase your value. In the relationship, it might involve clearly and calmly communicating your feelings, setting a healthy boundary, or choosing to forgive and let go of a past hurt. The goal of this exercise is not to make your worries disappear, but to give you a clear visual strategy for managing them. It shows you exactly where your energy will be effectively invested and where it will be wasted. By consciously directing your efforts toward the inner circle, you are not ignoring the problem. You are addressing it at its only possible point of entry through your own agency. This is how you stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming the author of your response, using the very act of focused attention as your most precise tool for change. Modern psychology calls it post-traumatic growth. The Stoics simply called it living according to nature. This powerful connection bridges an ancient philosophy with contemporary science, revealing a timeless truth about human potential. In recent decades, psychologists have identified a remarkable phenomenon. Many people who endure significant trauma do not just recover to their previous level of functioning. Instead, they report positive changes, emerging from the crisis with a greater appreciation for life, deeper personal strength, new possibilities, improved relationships, and a richer spiritual or philosophical understanding. They experience growth because of the struggle, not in spite of it. For the Stoics, this was not an unexpected bonus or a rare stroke of luck. It was the anticipated, natural result of engaging with hardship correctly. When you use adversity as the precision tool we have been discussing, when you apply the disciplines of perception, assent, and action, you are not merely patching up cracks. You are fundamentally reforging your character into a more resilient and insightful form. The goal is not to simply survive the storm, but to learn how to navigate so skillfully that you can harness its winds to carry you to a new destination. This transformative outcome is the implicit promise woven through every Stoic practice we have explored. It is the culmination of viewing obstacles as fuel, of loving your fate, and of building your inner citadel. The Roman poet Virgil captured this spirit when he wrote, "Perhaps even these things will be good to remember one day." The Stoics would argue that these things are not just good to remember, they are essential to who you become. The strength forged in difficulty is not like ordinary strength. It is a tempered resilience, a wisdom that has been tested against reality and found to be sound. It is the difference between a theoretical knowledge of compassion and a deep, hard-won empathy born from your own suffering. The person who has never faced a significant challenge may have a smooth life, but their character can remain untested and therefore underdeveloped. Adversity provides the necessary friction to polish our virtues until they shine with a practical, usable brilliance. This is what it means to live according to nature, to use every experience, especially the painful ones, as raw material for becoming a more complete and virtuous human being. Consider how this might manifest in a real-life scenario. Imagine 2 individuals who both experience a profound professional failure. such as a business they poured their heart into for years collapsing. The first person without a philosophical framework might be crushed by the event. They could succumb to despair, define themselves by the failure, and spend years trapped in bitterness, their confidence shattered. They merely endure the trauma. The second person, who has been practicing the Stoic arts, will certainly feel the pain and the disappointment, but they will also have a set of tools ready. They will use objective perception to see the failure not as a verdict on their worth, but as a specific event with specific causes. They will apply the Stoic Reframe, asking what virtues this situation allows them to practice, perhaps humility, perseverance, or the courage to start again. They will view the loss through the lens of Amor, Fati, trusting that this ending may be a necessary redirection. Over time, this second person integrates the experience. They emerge with a more realistic understanding of risk, a deeper gratitude for future successes, and a resilience that can only be earned through such a trial. They have not just recovered, they have leveled up. The failure becomes a cornerstone of their new, more robust identity. This is the shift in perspective you can apply to your own life right now. Look at a current struggle you are facing, whether it is a health issue, a relationship problem, or a career obstacle. Instead of framing it as something you need to get over or put behind you, try seeing it as a potential catalyst for your own post-traumatic growth. This is not about wishing for difficulty, but about recognizing the transformative potential already present within the difficulty you are currently navigating. The struggle itself is the gymnasium where your future, stronger self is being trained. The Stoic practices are the workout plan that ensures you build strength instead of incurring injury. By engaging with your challenges in this way, you are actively participating in your own evolution, steering the painful experience toward a meaningful outcome. So take a moment to engage in a powerful act of imagination. Envision yourself on the other side of your present challenge, but do not just envision the problem being gone. Envision who you have become in the process of overcoming it. What specific strength do you now possess that you did not have before? Perhaps you have developed a profound patience you never knew you were capable of. Maybe you have discovered a core of courage that allows you to speak your truth with new conviction. It could be that you have gained a clarity about what truly matters in your life, freeing you from the pursuit of superficial goals. See this future version of yourself clearly, wiser, more resilient, more compassionate. This vision is not a fantasy, it is a blueprint. By holding this image in your mind, you are not just passively waiting for the difficulty to end. You are actively inviting the growth. You are setting an intention for the struggle to mean something, for it to sculpt you into that stronger, more capable person. This act of anticipation is the final, crucial step in using adversity as a precision tool, transforming it from a random affliction into the very curriculum for your soul's education. A sculptor sharpens their tools before working. Each morning, we can sharpen our minds for the day's challenges. This brings us to a powerful and practical extension of the journaling practice we discussed earlier. While the evening review is like a craftsman inspecting the day's work, a brief morning ritual is like that initial sharpening of the chisel, a proactive preparation that sets the tone for everything that follows. Instead of waiting for adversity to strike and then reacting, this practice allows you to meet the day with a pre-established game plan for virtue. It is the difference between stepping onto a battlefield without armor and suiting up in the calm of the dawn, ready for whatever may come. The Stoics understood that a mind prepared for difficulty is a mind that cannot be easily overwhelmed. Seneca explicitly advised this very thing, suggesting we should say to ourselves each morning, "You may meet today with a busybody, with an ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial man." He was not promoting pessimism, he was promoting preparedness. By anticipating the friction of human interaction and the unpredictability of events, we inoculate our minds against the shock and frustration they can cause. We move from being surprised and offended by life's inevitable irritations to seeing them as part of the predictable terrain we are about to traverse. The practice itself is beautifully simple and requires only a minute or two of quiet focus. As you sip your morning coffee or before you check your phone, simply close your eyes and cast your mind forward into the day ahead. What specific challenges are likely to arise? Perhaps you have a difficult conversation scheduled with a team member. Maybe you are facing a tight deadline that typically triggers stress and impatience. Or it could be something as mundane as the usual rush hour traffic that tests your temper. The key is to move from a vague worry to a specific mental rehearsal. For each potential difficulty you identify, do not just picture the problem, picture your intended virtuous response. If the challenge is the difficult conversation, your preparation might be, I will aim to listen more than I speak. I will practice the virtue of justice by seeking to understand their perspective before asserting my own. If they become heated, I will respond with calmness. If the challenge is the stressful deadline, your mental preparation could be, I will focus only on the single task in front of me, practicing presence. When I feel rushed, I will take one deep breath to regain composure and remember that my value is not determined by this single outcome. This is not about scripting your day down to the last detail. It is about setting your moral and emotional compass so that when the winds of adversity blow, you know which way is north. Think of this as a mental fire drill. We conduct fire drills not because we expect a fire every day, but so that if one ever does occur, our response is automatic, calm, and effective. This morning review is a drill for your character. By mentally walking through potential scenarios and your chosen responses, you are carving deep neural grooves of resilience. You are building a cognitive reflex that, when triggered by a real-life event, will make a virtuous reaction more likely than a panicked one. The adversity loses its power to derail you because you have already greeted it as a familiar guest. You have already decided how you will host it. This practice transforms you from a passive recipient of the day's events into an active participant in shaping your experience. You are no longer waiting to see what the day will do to you. You are declaring how you will move through the day regardless of what it brings. So, the challenge for you is to embrace this sharpening ritual for the next 3 days. Do not make it complicated. Tomorrow morning, before the busyness begins, find just 60 seconds of quiet. Ask yourself those 2 simple questions. What single challenge might today present? And what virtue would I like to practice in response to it? That is all. You are not seeking to predict the future with perfect accuracy. The value lies in the act of preparation itself, in the conscious decision to align your intentions with your values before the world has a chance to pull you in other directions. This small, daily investment is like adding a single brick to your inner citadel each morning. Over time, these brief moments of preparation build an unshakable fortress of proactive calm, ensuring that you are not just using adversity as a tool, but that you are the one firmly holding the handle, ready to sculpt with purpose from the moment the day begins. We are social creatures. Sculpting our character is aided by sharing the journey with others. While the inner work of Stoicism is deeply personal, the idea that we should retreat into isolated self-sufficiency is a misunderstanding of the philosophy. The Stoics themselves were deeply engaged with their communities, from the lecture halls where Epictetus taught to the battlefields where Marcus Aurelius led his troops. They recognized that human beings are fundamentally designed for connection and cooperation, and that our moral development is not a solo project but a collaborative endeavor. Trying to navigate life's adversities entirely on your own is like trying to learn a complex language without ever speaking to another person. You might memorize the grammar, but you will miss the nuance, the rhythm, and the corrective feedback that only conversation can provide. A community of practice provides three essential elements that are difficult to cultivate in isolation: support, accountability, and the invaluable gift of shared perspective. When you are in the midst of a personal struggle, your own mind can become an echo chamber of worry or frustration. You can easily get stuck in a loop, seeing the problem from only one angle, your own. This is where a community becomes a lifeline. Sharing a challenge with a trusted group or even one other person who understands the Stoic framework does something remarkable. It externalizes the problem. By putting words to your difficulty, you are forced to structure your thoughts, and in doing so, you often gain clarity. But the real magic happens when others reflect back what they hear. They might point out a cognitive distortion you had not noticed, or they might share a similar experience and how they applied a specific principle like the discipline of assent or the view from above. This exchange is not about someone giving you the answer, but about them holding up a different mirror, allowing you to see your situation with new eyes. The Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus emphasized that we learn by example, stating that we need to surround ourselves with people whose actions inspire us to be better. In a community, you are not just reading about courage or justice. You are hearing first-hand accounts of people practicing these virtues in their daily lives, which makes the philosophy feel alive, tangible, and achievable. This sense of shared endeavor also creates a powerful form of gentle accountability. When you know you will be discussing your week's challenges with a group, you naturally become more mindful of your responses. It adds a layer of intention to your actions. You might find yourself pausing before reacting to a provocation, thinking, "How will I explain my response at the meeting?" This is not about performing for others, but about leveraging our natural social instincts to reinforce our commitment to growth. It is much easier to let a principle slide when no one is watching, but when you have made a commitment to a small community, that commitment strengthens your resolve. The group becomes a living embodiment of the sage we are trying to emulate, a collective conscience that encourages us to stay the course. Furthermore, seeing others struggle with and overcome their own obstacles provides a profound sense of hope. It reminds you that you are not alone in your efforts, that setbacks are universal, and that progress is possible. This collective resilience is incredibly nourishing, turning the sometimes arduous path of character building into a shared pilgrimage. Engaging with a community can take many forms, and it is important to find one that suits your temperament. For some, this might mean joining a dedicated online forum or a subreddit focused on Stoic practice, where you can read daily discussions and post questions anonymously. For others, it could be a local or virtual reading group that works through the classic texts like Seneca's letters or Marcus Aurelius's meditations together, chapter by chapter, allowing for deep dives into the concepts. You do not need a large group to start. Even a single conversation with a curious friend can be the seed of a community. You could suggest discussing a specific Stoic idea over coffee, perhaps using a recent personal challenge as a case study. The goal is not to debate philosophy as an abstract academic subject, but to explore together how these ancient ideas can provide practical guidance for modern problems. The act of explaining a Stoic concept to someone else is, in itself, one of the most powerful ways to deepen your own understanding. So, as you continue on this path of using adversity as your tool, I encourage you to look around. How might you find or even create a small community for philosophical discussion? Is there a friend or colleague who might be open to exploring these ideas with you? Could you seek out an online space where people are already having these conversations? The invitation is to move the philosophy from the pages of a book into the living room of your relationships. By sharing the journey, you are not diluting your personal responsibility, you are enriching it. You are adding the strength of shared wisdom to your individual practice, ensuring that when the next challenge arrives, you have not just your own inner citadel to retreat to, but a fellowship of fellow travelers standing with you, each sharpening their tools, each helping to sculpt a character of greater resilience and peace. Character sculpting is not a weekend project, it is the work of a lifetime. This final principle is perhaps the most grounding and essential of all, the one that allows all the others to flourish over the long term. It is easy to approach these Stoic tools with an initial burst of enthusiasm, imagining a swift and linear path to an unshakable character. But the reality of growth is far more organic and far less tidy. It is a spiral, not a straight line. You will circle back to the same challenges again and again, each time with a slightly higher vantage point, a little more strength, and a little more wisdom. There will be days when you feel like a true sage, navigating a difficult situation with grace and virtue. And there will be just as many days, perhaps more, when you feel you have failed completely, when an old, reactive pattern takes over and you say the harsh word, you succumb to the anxiety, you feel the familiar grip of resentment. The crucial work of a lifetime is not to avoid these setbacks, but to change your relationship with them. A lapse in practice is not a sign that the philosophy has failed or that you are incapable of growth. It is simply feedback. It is the chisel slipping for a moment, showing you where you need to adjust your grip, where your understanding is still a little unsteady. Seneca offers us the perfect perspective for this long view. He writes, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Notice the beautiful, ongoing nature of that statement. It does not say, learn how to live by the age of 30 and then you are done. It frames life itself as the classroom and every single day as a new lesson. The goal is not to graduate with a perfect score, but to remain a dedicated, curious student for the entire duration. This mindset liberates you from the tyranny of perfectionism. When you expect yourself to never make a mistake, you set a trap that guarantees disappointment and eventually surrender. But when you see each stumble as part of the curriculum, it loses its power to derail you. A musician does not quit practicing because they hit a wrong note. They simply play the passage again. In the same way, when you find yourself reacting to a delay with impatience instead of the patience you intended, you do not condemn yourself. You simply note what happened, understand the trigger, and mentally rehearse a better response for the next time a similar situation arises. The mistake becomes the very thing that deepens your learning. Think of it like building physical strength. If you go to the gym for the first time and try to lift a weight that is too heavy, you will not succeed. That is not failure, it is information. It tells you where your current limits are. So you choose a lighter weight, you practice the movement with proper form, and you consistently show up. Over weeks and months, the weight that once felt impossible becomes manageable. Your character is built in the very same way. The adversities of your life are the weights. When one feels too heavy, when it causes you to lose your form and react in a way you regret, it is not a signal to quit the gym of life. It is a signal to focus on the fundamentals, to build your strength gradually, and to trust the process. Perhaps the obstacle you faced was simply too advanced for your current level of resilience. That is okay. The practice is to find a slightly smaller weight, a daily irritation instead of a major crisis, and practice your virtues there until you are ready for the bigger challenges. This long-term perspective cultivates two essential qualities: a patience with yourself and persistence in the practice. Patience allows you to treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a dear friend who is learning a new skill. You would not berate them for not being an expert on the first day. You would encourage their effort and celebrate their small improvements. you must learn to become that kind friend to yourself. Persistence is the simple, dogged determination to return to the work day after day, especially after a setback. It is the decision that even if you have a terrible day where nothing seems to go right and you feel you have forgotten every Stoic principle you ever learned, you will still sit down for just 2 minutes the next morning and sharpen your mind. You will still try to find one small thing to be grateful for. That act of returning, however small, is a victory in itself. It is the affirmation that the journey is more important than any single misstep along the way. So, as we conclude this exploration of practical principles, I want to leave you with this final reflection and invitation. Think back on your own life, not with judgment, but with the curious eye of an archaeologist uncovering the layers of your own character. Can you see the progress? Can you notice how you handle certain difficulties today with more grace than you would have 5 years ago? That progress, however incremental, is real. It is evidence that the work matters. Now make a quiet commitment to yourself. Commit to being a lifelong student of your own character. Promise yourself that you will be patient when the growth feels slow, and that you will be persistent when the path feels steep. Understand that the goal is not to become a flawless statue, immune to the elements, but to become a skilled and devoted sculptor, forever learning, forever refining, forever finding meaning and strength in the very act of shaping yourself. This lifelong project is not a burden. It is the most dignified and rewarding work you will ever do. It is the ongoing creation of a life lived with purpose, resilience, and profound inner freedom. And so we arrive at the heart of the matter, the single thread that weaves through every principle we have explored. The traffic jam, the critical email, the professional setback, the personal loss, none of these are interruptions to your life. They are the very substance of it. They are not obstacles blocking your path. They are the path itself, the precise and necessary tools for the most important work you will ever do, the sculpting of your own character. Think back on the journey we have taken together. It began with the most fundamental shift of all, changing what the word adversity even means to you, moving from seeing it as a malicious force to recognizing it as neutral raw material. We then learned to sharpen our perception, to cut away the frightening stories we tell ourselves, and see the objective facts with a clear and steady eye. We fortified our inner citadel, understanding that our true self, our will and our character, is a fortress that external events cannot breach unless we willingly open the gates. We explored the profound acceptance of Amor Fati, learning to love our fate not with passive resignation but with an active, joyful embrace of every event as a necessary part of our development. We prepared our minds with Premeditatio Malorum, rehearsing challenges to drain them of their shock value and arm ourselves with calm, premeditated responses. We mastered the critical pause, the discipline of assent, creating that sacred space between an event and our reaction where our freedom truly lies. We reframed every obstacle, seeing it not as a barrier but as fuel, an invitation to practice a specific virtue like courage, temperance, or justice. We gained cosmic perspective with the view from above, shrinking our problems down to their true size against the vast backdrop of time and space. We even voluntarily embraced discomfort, building our resilience muscles so that when involuntary hardship strikes, we meet it not with panic but with proven capability. All of this converges on a single, empowering truth. You are not a passive block of marble waiting to be shaped by random blows. You are the sculptor. And adversity is your chisel. It is the precise, often sharp, instrument that allows you to chip away fear, insecurity, and reactivity to reveal the strong, virtuous, and resilient character that has been there all along. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus gave us a final, piercing insight that encapsulates this entire journey. He said, "Difficulties are things that show what men are." Notice he does not say difficulties are things that break men or that punish men. They show what men are. They are the revealers, the testers, the moments of truth that separate our professed values from our lived character. A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor, and a life without challenge never forged a soul of depth and strength. This is your call to action. It is not a call to seek out suffering, but to stop running from the difficulties that life naturally brings. The next time you feel the sting of a setback, the heat of frustration, or the weight of a loss, I invite you to pause and see it with new eyes. See the chisel in your hand. Ask yourself the Stoic questions. What virtue can I practice here? How can I use this moment to strengthen my inner citadel? What would it mean to love this piece of my fate? This is how you transform your life from a series of problems to be solved into a masterpiece in progress. Your journey does not end here. It is just beginning with a new set of tools. And this is where we can all learn from each other. In the comments below, I would love to hear your stories. Share a time when you faced a difficulty and perhaps without even knowing it, used it as a tool for growth. What did it reveal about your character? Your experiences become a living library of resilience for this entire community. Remember, you are far more capable than you know. You have within you the calm reason of Marcus Aurelius, the unwavering integrity of Cato, and the profound freedom of Epictetus. Do not shy away from the challenges ahead. Welcome them, for they are not your enemies. They are the indispensable tools you will use to sculpt a life of unshakable purpose, peace, and power. The marble is waiting. It is